Okay. Okay, we're going to call to order the regular city council meeting of February 8th, 2021. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Here.
Salvia,
Here.
Albrecht,
Here.
Bavacqua,
Here.
Harrison,
Here.
Peterson,
Here.
Sage.
Here.
Thank you. Now we're going to have Councilmember Peterson do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And welcome everybody. So before we get started, I'm just looking, Siona, is Councilmember Peterson on here?
Unfortunately, she does not have her video on. So
okay, just so she's here. So
yes, I am. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Trying to get it to work.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure you were there.
Thank you.
Okay, so first we are going to have, so again, welcome everybody to our meeting. We have a important thing on our agenda, some other things, so we will get right to it. First, we're going to ask for public comment for things that are not on the agenda. So if you want to speak on the agenda item, please hold that until we get there. Everybody, I promise, will have a chance to talk tonight. We're planning on that, and we're welcoming citizens' input. So if you have public comment tonight on something that's not on the agenda, now's the time. Siona, do we have anybody?
No, we do not.
Okay. So then we're going to have Councilmember Peterson wanted to talk about the information that she sent out today on the rental property. So Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Stuart. One moment. So I had forwarded to everyone, based on one of our last conversations, meetings regarding the rental property prices. And I wanted everyone to know firsthand what is truly happening in and around our community and the outlying surrounding communities regarding the rental prices. So I had given a 5-year report for the last 5 years from 2015 to 2020, showing how the rent prices have barely fluctuated, even in the amount of rentals over the actual price of the rentals going up year after year, and how we have stayed pretty steady in those numbers. And I thought it was very important to show you firsthand the prices that we are looking at in rents in our community. That's been a huge topic with some of the construction that has been happening, and I felt it was going to be most important for everyone to be pretty educated before we get into some of these discussions. Happy to take any questions regarding any of the information you may have looked at, but in the following, let me see, I'm trying to get to my page to read to you. We have had, and this was broken down with residential and condominiums. And residential right now, the average price, and that's taking everything into account, was $2,270 is kind of the average rent price in so far this for 2020. And then as far as condos, we were looking at an average price of $1,349. And those were actually just based on all different prices. So that's just taking everything that had been rented, no matter what the price point, and that's where we came up with. But you will see that we've had a substantial, one of our highest condo sales for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath was for like $2,900. So, and our lower ones go anywhere from $700 a month and up, and that's for a 1-bedroom. So overall, our community has been pretty stable for the last 5 years with the rents. when you look at the other surrounding communities that I provided was Shelby, Auburn Hills, Pontiac, Lake Orion, and Troy, I believe, was in there as well. You're going to see that we're all in the same running together with getting in Auburn Hills with all these rents. Rochester Hills, Orion, it all depends exactly where they're at, but we all have and carry the substantial rental markets surrounding us. So if there are any questions, be happy to do so. I just really wanted everyone to have a firsthand look at the actual true market.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any questions from the council? Okay. Rent is expensive out there, I think. Next, we have approval of the minutes of the consideration of the regular meeting of January 25th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Councilmember Albrecht, support by Councilmember Peterson. Discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda as a request for review and approval to complete the 2021 high-intensity drug trafficking area subscription grant agreement between Oakland County and the City of Rochester. And I believe we've had this before the council.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson, support by Mayor Pro Tem Salvia. Discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage.
Yes.
Thank you. We do not have any old business or table items. Next, we're going to move to public hearings. First is a public hearing for comments regarding the consideration of a site plan and special project for the proposed Riverfront Place apartment project, a 5-story, 134-unit multi-family apartment building and 5 3-unit, 4-story townhouse buildings to be located on the southwest corner of First Street and Diversion. I think this is the main show for tonight. So I just want to give people a little kind of outline on what the procedure is going to be, and then we'll get started. So first, we're going to have the city planner discuss the project. Then will be city council questions to the planner if there are any. Then we're going to have the developer presentation, city council questions if there are any. Then we're going to open the public hearing, which will have public input from the public, anybody who wants to speak. Then we'll close the public hearing, and then city council will have deliberation after that. Okay, so that's kind of the game plan. I mean, I think we're flexible, but that's going to be kind of how we're going to try to run things. And again, everybody is going to get a chance to speak. So, please be patient, but that's how we're going to do it. So first, we're going to have our city planner, Vidya, from McKenna, who is going to give an introduction to the project. So Vidya, welcome tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Dixon, members of the council. Before you tonight is a request from Mr. Rendazzo to construct, as you said, a 5-story, 134-unit multifamily apartment building and 5 3-unit, 4-story townhouse buildings. The site is located on the southwest corner of First Street and Diversion and is zoned RM2, which is multiple family residential. Now, this project was first started in 2017 and has been before the Planning Commission multiple times over the years for discussion on it. However, this is the first time it is appearing before the entire City Council. So I'll do my best to go over all the most important details of the project so you will be able to ask any relevant questions of the developer or myself in order to get the necessary clarification. Now, multiple family dwellings are permitted by our zoning ordinance as a special exception in the RM2 district. So the use proposed by Mr. Randazzo is allowed in the current zoning as long as the project meets all the requirements of the zoning ordinance as it's written. That is, it must comply with the setbacks, building height, and all of the other requirements. However, the applicant is seeking to deviate from the maximum height permitted for the building and also the setbacks, which is why they are before you tonight seeking special projects approval. This site is included in the city's current master plan, which calls it a PICA, a potential intensity change area. So you can consider a special project for this proposal. So at this time, the special project approval is being requested by the applicant for the reason that they will not be able to comply as proposed to the underlying RM2 district's requirements for height and setbacks. The plan proposed before the Planning Commission included 3 phases. I will share the site plan the applicant presented before you on the screen so you can follow along with me as I'm doing the review. Is everybody able to see the site plan on your screen?
Yes, yes, thank you.
So the applicant had proposed 3 phases for this project. Phase 1 would be construction of 1/2 of the apartment building, this section. There will be a wall over here, and this area will remain vacant. Phase 2 would be construction of this L portion of the building to complete the whole apartment building. And depending upon the progress of phases 1 and 2, the applicant might wait or simultaneously start construction on these townhouse buildings. Now, the timeline that the applicant presented when they came before the Planning Commission, they received recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission on August 3rd of 2020. And I think the timeline presented at that time for approvals is already passed. So the applicant would need to actually clarify before you tonight, what is the potential timeline they're looking for this project in terms of completing engineering, groundbreaking, phase 1, phase 2, and possibly phase 3. So that is something for the applicant to address at the time they make their presentation. With regard to area and setbacks, the required setbacks in the RM2 district is 40 feet for the front, 40 feet for the side, and 40 feet for the rear. Now, the site plan as proposed shows a 0 feet front yard along First Street, and it has got a side yard that varies anywhere from 1.7 feet over here to 0.7 feet here. So it's less than a foot on one side and less than 2 feet on the other side and 0 feet over here. So because of these setback deviations, it is once again a special project. The site fronts onto First Street and there is diversion to the side. The applicant was asked by the Planning Commission to do a detailed traffic study, and they did hire consultants, Fleece and Vanderbrink, who I believe are on tonight's meeting, to do an extensive traffic study as to the trips generated by this proposed use, its impact on the abutting streets, and what improvements, if any, are necessary. I am sure the applicant's traffic engineer will go over some of that, or Mr. Milia from the project representative will actually go over the details of that project for you. The plan indicates a new sidewalk along the site's frontage over here. There is an existing sidewalk and connectors to be proposed over here. This drive is going to be called Riverfront Way. There is going to be a sidewalk along this whole side, and there is also going to be a sidewalk on the north side of the townhouses, which will connect to existing sidewalks along Campbell Avenue on the side. So a network of sidewalks will be provided. Based on the ordinance standards, you can see this is the phasing plan, phase 1, phase 2. Based on the ordinance requirements, the applicant is compliant with the parking required for the site. The lowermost level of this building is entirely parking. And one of the things the Planning Commission required was that every stage, when complete, needs to have all of the parking associated with that phase. So when this phase is completed, all of the parking required for this phase will be included. When the second phase is built, the additional parking will be built under, and the site will be compliant with the parking requirements at all stages and at all phases. Moving on to architecture. Now, the applicant did submit detailed elevations of the proposed building and the townhouses. They went through multiple iterations of, I will see. They went through multiple iterations of the building. The original, it's been at least 4 times before the Planning Commission for just the architecture. The original building had a single big roof line that encompassed the whole building. Upon receipt from the Planning Commission for building mass and size, the applicant changed the design in order to create a break in between, even though this is a common entrance of First Street. This is First Street and this is Walnut. The applicant created a break so that you have gives the appearance of 2 separate buildings in order to reduce the mass of the structure itself. So this is the view from Rochester Road, the bridge that is leading into the city. These are the existing buildings in front already, the Kroskilani building, and this is how the building will look. A lot of brick is being used. The original materials were changed. There is incorporation of some amount of limestone. Yes, there is some amount of ephes on this building. However, the ephes is limited to use as an accent material only, which is allowed on buildings as long as it limits itself to an accent and not as a primary building material. Not that ephes is a bad material, it's just not very durable in the long run. It does not weather the test of time, which is why the architecture was multiple times revised in order to provide the architecture that the applicant has. With regard to building height, the midpoint of the peak of the apartment building it varies, since when you're coming down Walnut, the property actually gradually decreases in grade all the way till you reach the river. So the front of the building on First Street appears higher and it appears lower on the other side. So the building is actually from a side angle when you view the 2 points will have different heights. The applicant will make a presentation, I'm hoping included in their presentation, about the building height variations and the line of sight diagrams. Line of sight basically will give the city council a good idea of how is this building going to look when you're coming into the city on the bridge, how is it going to look as you approach it on the trail, and what is going to be the impact of this building in terms of height and mass. Is it going to appear overwhelming compared to the buildings around it, or is it going to visually fit into the rest of it? With regard to landscaping, the applicant had to have multiple iterations to that too. The plan does propose a lot of landscaping around the site. I'll go back to the site plan, but one of the key elements was creation of this pocket park that is at the corner of First Street and Diversion. And this pocket park is going to be located, the pocket park's location is this star over here. This is the area where the pocket park will go. The applicant's plan does propose removal of a significant number of trees. Now, when they did their tree survey, this is the north half of the site, and this is the south half. The original plan that was presented before the Planning Commission had only the north half, and the Planning Commission was not receptive to the project because they felt it did not have enough of landscaping or enough room to provide green area. Subsequently, the applicant acquired this piece of land in order to give more open space feeling to the development. However, addition of this land also resulted in addition of all these townhouse buildings into the project at that stage. The applicant's proposal for landscaping includes street trees provided along here, some landscaping and ornamental trees along all the periphery property lines, and staggered random street trees to be placed over here. One of the things in parking I do need to mention is the applicant is proposing a public drop-off spot over here. Say somebody is dropped off by Uber or something, there is a drop-off spot located here. That will require approval by the DPW and the public services in the city to make sure that it is permissible and would work with the infrastructure. Other details with regard to lighting, trash removal, they're addressed to the satisfaction of how this apartment complex is going to operate. One of the important things was this building has got 2 public common areas. They are called Terrace 1 and Terrace 2, or they're called the terraces had specific names for how they are going to be called, East and West Terrace. Now, on the ground, this appears green, but when you go up to the building, the upper levels actually have a terraced area over here. The Planning Commission had the original plan proposed highly active recreation areas in the space. Planning Commission had concern that when you're coming off the bridge, you're going to be seeing people hanging out around the swimming pool and umbrellas, and it's not going to be a good look for the city. Since then, the applicant revised the plans for these two terrace areas, make them more of a passive recreation. It's more of a pergolas, a croquet golf, that kind of more sedate kind of terrace spaces for people who live in the complex itself. Stormwater detention is a significant portion of this project. However, that has been deferred to the city's engineer, and that is an update the applicant will have to provide whether preliminary engineering has been done in order to find out how the stormwater system or the existing system, if it's got the capacity to handle this project, or how it will be handled in the future. Finally, with regard to special projects, our zoning ordinance used to have very subjective standards. There were no specific standards when somebody came and applied for a special project. As a special project, an applicant is required, I'll stop share for a second. As a special project, an applicant is required to provide something to the community that goes above and beyond just a site plan. It has to provide a significant benefit to the community and the public in large for it to be considered for such approval. Merely building a really good building or putting in lots of landscaping does not constitute public benefit. So every project is required to demonstrate that. A few years ago, in order to provide that evaluation with a more concrete basis, the city directed McKenna to prepare something called as a sustainability worksheet. It had a total of 5 indicators with 4 items under each. So the applicant, any project that comes before the Planning Commission and the Council, that is a special project, will have to score points out of those 20. If you get points less than 10, the project is considered as non-sustainable. It needs to be mitigated. Between 11 and 14, project must be mitigated. That is, the project may be looked forward to, however, many changes have to be made. And then 15 and above is considered as a sustainable project, which basically means it meets the sustainability goal of the city. Now, getting a viable, sustainable score is not a guarantee of special projects or site plan approval. It is just a tool the city uses in order to apply special projects criteria fairly to all property owners. You don't want to tell one property owner that a heated sidewalk is acceptable, another trail addition is acceptable, and another build an entire parking lot. They have to be evaluated using the same standards, and that's what the sustainability worksheet does for you. In your packet is a sustainability evaluation that I performed for this project. It is actually 4th sustainability review. This project, like I said, went through so many revisions over the years. Their initial score was 8 out of 20, which means the project is a no-go. The applicant subsequently revised it and got slightly above 11. Then they had to revise it again, and they improved their score to 14. And then they made further changes. And at this point of time, they have scored a total of 16 out of 20, which, at least from the frame of our sustainability analysis, is considered as a project that meets technically the sustainability challenge. The applicant, in their written statement about what benefit are they providing to the community in order to be designated as a special project, actually put forth a written letter, and the public benefit, according to them, is contributing $75,000 towards the city's vision for the Clinton River landing area. And they also believe that it is a benefit to the community because they are redeveloping a former industrial site. When an industrial site is redeveloped, it is called as brownfield redevelopment, because part of the process will require removal of all existing contaminants in the soil and bringing it up for federal land use standards. To the soil quality has to be good enough, especially if it's going to be used for residential purposes. So their benefit to the community, as presented by them, is that they will be rehabilitating a brownfield site, and they will be donating $75,000 for the Clinton River landing area. Based on this presentation and these requirements, the Planning Commission, seeing this at least 5 to 6 times since 2017, the Planning Commission in August made a recommendation for approval of this project and sent it over to the City Council. However, per our zoning ordinance, the city council is the final approving body on the special projects. Even if the planning commission grants site plan approval, this project can move forward only if it gets the special projects designation, and that power and authority rests only with the city council. So I tried to keep it as succinct as possible while providing you with details of all the main aspects of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and I'm hopeful Mr. Milia will go over the details of the traffic study, architecture, and all in his presentation. Are there any questions I can answer for the council?
Yeah, Councilmember Albrecht.
Thank you, Vidya, for your presentation. I know in the city council agenda, it says 134 units, but in the presentation and everything I've read, I thought it was 129 residents, 62 in phase 1 and 67 in phase 2. I thought that number went down from 134 to 129. I just wanted to make sure we're dealing with the right number. And then second part, those 5 townhomes, are those 5 families, 5 residents, or are there more residents in those? Is each townhome 2 or 3 residents?
Yes, I believe you are correct in that the number of units needs clarification. Based upon the applicant's statement that they had reduced some of the dwelling units, it should be 129, but in their cover letter, it still notes as 134. So I would ask the applicant to correctly make a notation of exactly how many apartments are going to be there. That is a good catch. With regard to the townhouses, there are 5 buildings with 3 units in each. So there are a total of 15 townhouses.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vidya. This was a really informative presentation. I'm curious with, 100 and some new residents coming in, there's probably going to be an increased strain on our water, our sewage, electricity usage in the city. What is our infrastructure set up to add this much more residents to the area?
I believe since the project has been around for this long, the applicant was required to contact the city's engineering consultant, which is AE&W, and get a feasibility analysis done, at least if they can figure out whether the existing system has got the capacity to handle this load or whether any additional improvements are required. I don't know the details of exactly what the engineer told the applicant at this point, so I would have to defer to either the city manager, Mr. Wing, or Nick, in order to provide an update on engineering, because they generally coordinate with the engineering consultant and the applicant.
Mr. City Manager, did you want to comment on that?
Yep. So as Vidya noted, there was conversations with our engineers. We've confirmed both the sewer and the water is we have the capacity for this development and others. A lot of that took place due to back in 2016 and 17 when we've actually reduced our I&I and done other improvements to our overall system. So that opened up more capacity. The electricity would have to be something that we'd actually have to talk either with the engineer or maybe maybe Andy actually might know. But I don't think it was not indicated as an issue from our engineers.
Very good. Further comments, questions for the planner?
Just one, Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, so Vidya, thank you for a very great review and report on this project. When it came to the 0 setbacks, okay, so the front is right in on the line as well, correct?
Correct.
All right, and then the sides. And does that take into account the width of the sidewalks along there? Or because you stated that there'd be sidewalks in front as well. So how far are we from the road to the building?
The setbacks are always measured from the property line or the right-of-way line. In developed communities, the property line and the right-of-way line are the same. And the sidewalk is set 1 feet inside the public right-of-way. So the setbacks that are noted, so here the building will be almost at the sidewalk. There'll be only 1 feet difference between the sidewalk and the building. When you say 0 foot setback, it means the building is on the property line and the sidewalk is 1 feet on the other side. Over here, we have about 1.7 feet, add another 1 feet for the sidewalk, so about 2.5 feet the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is going to run right along, similar to a building in a downtown. Like when you walk past downtown buildings, the sidewalk is at the building itself, and that's how it's going to be here.
Okay, and then next is, how wide is that sidewalk?
Public sidewalks are required to be 5 feet wide and constructed of concrete. Those are ADA requirements.
Okay, because I know we like expanded ours in the park. I was just checking. Then I guess one more, if I may, Mayor.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so the 129 units.
Uh-huh.
So it says 134 units and then plus 5, it would be 129 units plus the 5 other units, so making it 134, correct?
Well, it's 134 units, which probably is 129 units. That is for just the apartments. In addition is the townhouses.
Correct, right. I understand that. I just, over the clarification of, it was stated that these are residents. These are not residents, these are units.
Correct.
That be there, so, okay. And you also mentioned regarding the Pika
Uh-huh.
area. All right, so reviewing the sustainability maps that we have from prior as well. These districts down here all showed something different from across the street that's more on the hill of Walnut compared to the ones that are to the south where this is to be developed. My question is just for clarification for the public, since it's been asked, how tall is it right there at the corner of Diversion, and what's the height right there with all in all of the building at Diversion and First on the corner?
So with regard to, first I'll answer the first part of the question. This site, you're perfectly correct. This site is designated in the master plan as a multiple family residential 2 to 3 stories. That's what it is in the current master plan. And the north side of First Street is all a different master planning district. I believe this is Downtown Edge 1, or yes, this is probably Downtown Edge 1 or one of the transition districts. So the master plan designation for this site, First Street Lofts, and all of the properties to the north is different than what is on the south side of First Street. With regard to height of this building, the height to building height on the north facade is 59 feet 3 inches, which would be over here, 59 feet 3 inches. And on the south facade, because the land slopes and drops off, it is 67 feet 10 inches.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. And so, if I may, Mayor,
Yes.
a couple more clarifications. So, all right, so you mentioned that significant, the give back, to allow for the significant benefit to the community overall is down at the Clinton River Landing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so with it being, and that's the most significant that we are going to see, because is there future plans for that? I thought that was already, never mind. I'll pass on that question for now. Thank you.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might follow up on Council Member Peterson's comment there regarding the landing. What is the estimated cost to develop that entire area? What's the proposed plan cost?
That the Clinton River Landing Area's development plan would be part of the City of Rochester's Park and Recreation Master Plan. And the applicant picked out a component from the city's master plan for the Parks and Rec plan and said, okay, we will help make that project happen as part of this project. I am not sure of what the cost estimate is. Maybe Mr. Banda can chip in on that as to the cost, because he is more in touch with what the costs of these projects are currently. He might be able to provide a better insight on what the cost is for the whole project. But the applicant has offered $75,000 towards that landing area. It's important to note that when we have a special project, any benefits or improvements that the applicant is offering should be tied to their project and should benefit the residents of this project also, which is why I believe they picked the Clinton River Landing, because the residents of these apartment units will be able to use the Clinton River Landing area also. We cannot require offsite improvements that are of no benefit to this project also. Has to be tied to this project. I believe that's the reason for the applicant picking that Clinton River Landing project. Unless Nick wants to add in something more about this landing park, that is about all the information I have on that one.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to?
Mr. Banda, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody. We worked with Lawrence Tech and then the Clinton River Watershed folks years ago, and I think Councilman Sage, you might have been there under the bridge when we did that. I remember we were all under there doing a charrette to design it, and many of the factions have already been built. The path, the asphalt path that goes down to the landing, the kayak launch. So what's left is rain chains that come off the bridge, a mural, an amphitheater that people could sit at. So it depends on which parcel. The total cost of that project was about $200,000 if done back then. So this would probably build the amphitheater, commission the mural. We put the rain gardens in already. So it's just pieces of it that people have sponsored, or the benches have already been paid for, et cetera. So this would go probably towards the amphitheater, and that we can do at any time. It's a phased project.
Okay, so would this complete the project?
No, I wouldn't think so.
What would it take to complete the project?
We'd have to bid it out to see if we got a mural that was donated, zero cost. The rain chains are literally a couple $1,000s. The amphitheater was the biggest price tag. And again, those are 6-year-old prices. So we'd have to vet that back out.
So we pulled 75,000 as a figure out of whatever analysis. What does that do?
Yeah, that number most likely came from the last time City Council approved a special project was the overlook, and we had not bid out the improvements at the parking lot adjacent to overlook, and there's a guess of $75,000. That developer said, then I'd rather give you guys the money and you figure out how to put your kiosks up, informational kiosks, a bathroom, whatever. I believe this developer did the same thing, matching that number for us to bid out and see what we can get, how far we can get with those dollars. There are no official bids on what's going to be done.
Again, I guess then I'm questioning, what does $75,000 mean to us? This is supposed to benefit the city, and yet I can't tell anyone what $75,000 is going to do.
We have to bid it out.
Mayor, I have a follow-up.
Councilmember Peterson, then Councilmember Albert.
Okay. Oh, Mark can go. I've already spoken. Go ahead, Mark.
Councilmember Albert.
Well, the one was to clarify Councilmember Peterson's comment. When Vidya talked about it before, the apartment residents are 129. Vidya said there were 5 buildings with 3 units per building, which would be 15. So the total units would be 144. I just wanted to confirm that's what I heard, and that's what Vidya said, just because I know that's going to come up later tonight. That was just a clarification. I wanted to follow up on Councilmember Sage's point also. With these special projects, 75,000, it's a number. I wet my finger, hold it to the air, and it's 75,000. It's not inconsequential. I get that. And I wanted to know, what have developers contributed for prior special projects, First Street Lofts, Overlook, other ones that have come up, because I think it should be consistent with that. And if it meant, to Councilmember Sage's point, that Mr. Vanda said that, it cost $200,000 to do this Clinton River landing, which I'm looking at right now. Some of it's been done. Why would we not just say, hey, this is what it's going to cost? This would be your contribution to that special project. So I guess the question is more to Nick versus Vidya on that one.
Yeah, and I can answer that. So we've been all over the place. So First Street Lofts, technically, I know they wrote a letter that said they put in $500,000 because they had to redo the road and the alley. Well, they destroyed the road and the alley, so they had to replace that no matter what. They did increase a little area on the corner and put 9 parking spaces in the right of way. So again, there wasn't a dollar figure. There was part of their project that they had to rebuild the road and the alley because they were using them for access for months at a time. Overlook, again, we didn't know how much it was going to cost to do the improvements on the trail. The Royal Park had a special project. They agreed to do the sidewalks at Elizabeth Park. Well, Sherry agreed to do the landscaping. Again, neither of those had a hard figure to them because we weren't at that point. It wasn't staff saying, don't give us a number. It's like, we're going to do those projects. We have the amphitheater, rain chains, and a mural. That will complete the under the bridge. What we do is we can leverage those dollars, the $75,000, to a grant if that would complete the whole site, if it did. So again, it's not a clear cut, here's what you're giving us the money for. Again, we didn't negotiate that. That was between the Planning Commission and the staff does not recommend a dollar amount at any time. That's between the developer and the Planning Commission now. So
I guess my point is that if this gets done and we have a special project, and I've read through the, what's involved for a special project, I'd love to be able to say, this is what we got. Not just some sidewalks here or some this or that there. So, you mentioned First Street Lofts, put in 9 parking spaces. I'm sure we could monetize what that added up to be, whatever that amount was. I just want, as we do these special projects, for us to be consistent based on the size of the project, what exception we're making and the contribution they're making to the city to help the residents and citizens of the city enjoy whatever improvement they're making. So I don't think you're going to answer that tonight, but that was the part. The 75,000 was just, again, it's a solid number. I'm not diminishing $75,000 contribution to the Clinton River landing. I just want to know what it's going to do and should that number be higher. I'm done, Mayor. Thank you.
Vidya, did you have a comment?
Yes, Mayor. I just wanted to add that when an applicant seeks a special project approval, the burden of proof is on them to demonstrate to you what public benefit they are giving. I would be very, very cautious about telling an applicant what we find to be acceptable. The projects that Nick mentioned earlier was when applicants actually said, okay, we would like to make improvements. What projects are available in the city for us to do that will benefit us? And Nick made the suggestions about Overlook, you have this landing, this trail connection you can do, and Blossom Mills was close to Elizabeth Park, so it made sense to offer them suggestions. But at no point of time, I would caution the city to say, we would like you to build this amphitheater in order to be designated as a special project. It is the applicant's responsibility to demonstrate what the public benefit is. They need to be able to evaluate that and offer it to the city. The city cannot ask for what benefit it will find to be acceptable. You will evaluate what they have turned in, whether it meets your standards for public benefit or not. So that is a very slippery slope. So I would be very, very cautious while going down the road. If applicant picked 75,000 as a number, comparing it to the number offered by another developer for another project. So that was their rationale. The city cannot request a particular improvement saying this project is left incomplete, this is what is left to be complete. It's up to the developer to come up with that for you. So I would be a little cautious in what we can ask a developer to do. That's their job to offer it to the city and demonstrate that doing the amphitheater is actually beneficial to the city as a whole and also to the residents of proposed riverfront apartment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vidya. Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to reserve my follow-up question for the developer.
Very good. Any further question, Councilmember Bavacqua?
Just a quick observation. I think just based on a couple of the questions and feedback, you might see why I've been a little concerned about the special project planning process. So
Very good.
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson was right after me.
Councilmember Peterson?
Thank you, Mayor, but however, I will wait until we deliberate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything further for the planner? I have one question. Vidya, the applicant was clear that they are not going to ask for a brownfield development site. Is that true?
Correct. I have not heard them say at any point of time that they're going to ask for a brownfield designation. That they are going to clean up the site in order to be able to build.
You did, city manager, wasn't that clearly asked, and they said that they were not going to ask that?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, so they are not going to go for a brownfield development. Okay. Okay, thank you, Vidya, very much. Okay, now we're on to the developer presentation. We have Mr. Milia representing Randazzo. I don't know if Mr. Randazzo is here or not, but Mr. Milia, the floor is yours. Welcome to our meeting tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. We appreciate the opportunity to present. We have our full development team with us tonight. Mr. Randazzo is on the call as well as our traffic engineer, our civil engineer, and our project architect, should you have any more technical questions. But we are pleased to present to you this evening. Basically, what we want to go through is give you a background of who we are, including the development team, the inspiration, and some of the history of River Place. And as Vidya aptly mentioned, this project was first reviewed in 2017. So we've worked collaboratively with your staff and your various consultants for the past 4 years. And what we have before you is, I think, the result and the product of that. So we're very pleased with the collaborative effort that we've been able to deal with the city. And then we'll talk specifically about how does it fit into Rochester, give you an overall introduction to the project. So we hope to answer many of the questions that were raised, but certainly available to answer any more questions after our presentation. Who we are, this is a development of the Trowbridge companies. Mr. Randazzo and his family have enjoyed over 40 years of residential and commercial development, all in Southeast Michigan. High quality single family homes, apartments, shopping centers, office, and industrial. But really, what really specialize in is high quality residential, such as this. So some of the recent projects were the Caswell development in Troy, project that just got approved in Royal Oak called the Hazelton, similar style of architecture and design, and the Dakota in downtown Birmingham. And if any of you have seen the Dakota in Birmingham, you'll see the quality that this was built with in terms of material quality, design quality, and just how well it fits into the character and nature of the community and fitting in with Birmingham. And we would bring that same design philosophy and commitment to quality to this development. Also with us tonight is Bill Jarrett of Jarrett Architecture, Noack and Foster, our civil engineer that's worked in conjunction with your planners and engineers. ASTI Environmental worked on the review for the cleanup of the site. Gleason Vandenbrink is our traffic study consultant. Julie Kroll is available to answer any questions you might have on there. And Allen and Associates Consulting did the market feasibility on the need for quality apartments in Rochester. The inspiration for Riverfront, it's really an opportunity to cater to downtown Rochester. It's to fit in within the community, to provide housing options for residents, business owners, and employees. It's not to change the nature of the community. It's to fit in with the community and add a product type that's rarely needed. This product is popular throughout the country, and it's becoming more popular even during COVID, as people are spending a lot of time in the residence. They're looking for quality. There's a greater sense of working from home that will be with us forever now. Yes, people will go back to work, but there's been a sense that there will be more people working from home, wanting to live in a community such as this, that they're home now 24 hours a day, and they're going to be able to want to walk to have a walkable community. So this project, when it was conceived in 2017, is now fitting in and meeting that description even more. It will help increase foot traffic and bring new consumers to the downtown businesses that is sorely needed, quite frankly, pre-COVID, and really needed now. This will help bring many new families into the downtown and walkable area to the residents, merchants, and shops. And it meets many of the sustainability values. As Vidya had said, when we started out this project, we were between 8 and 11 on the sustainability scale. And working with your planners and consultants and in the 4-year collaboration project process, we're able to get the sustainability up to a very high 16. So we're very pleased with that. The inspiration is, we meet the target audience in Rochester, and we really meet many different groups. The term is striving singles. It's a preference for professional affluent singles that want an urban walkability. They want the neighborhood amenities. They want the proximity to retail and dining. People are not always wanting to get in their car and drive to a suburban shopping center. They want to be able to walk. So that's one section or one segment of a market that we expect to have. We expect a lot of younger couples that are moving into the community or moving up within the community. Now that people are working from home, and they've discovered that they can go out of town for a couple of weeks and still work and not have to take vacation for it, but they can work via Zoom like we're having this meeting. We're finding that a lot of younger couples don't necessarily want to be wed to a specific home or a larger home, but they want a high quality apartment. So this is really coming in to become even more popular post-COVID. But in addition to the singles, we expect a lot of younger couples. And quite frankly, we expect a lot of empty nesters that live currently in the Rochester area that want to downsize from their larger home, but they don't want to leave the community. Oftentimes people have to sell their 3,000-foot home and they have to move into Birmingham, or they'll move into Royal Oak because they want a urban apartment that they can walk to. This gives it to us. So we're very pleased that we can hit all 3 market segments. We believe that this will have a very significant economic impact on the benefit for the community. Our market study from Integra Realty just a year and a half ago believes that this will provide a very positive economic impact to the retailers, businesses, and restaurants in the community. The existing supply of apartment communities is less than 5%, so we're bringing it forth at a needed and necessary time. Question was asked by the Planning Commission. We expect to absorb 8 to 10 units per month once the development is built. And it's a welcome addition to the existing inventory. Most of the apartments, with the exception of First Street Lofts, are very old. Most of them were built prior to 1970. Rochester is one of the few communities that hasn't experienced high quality apartment development that's going up currently in Birmingham. It's going up in Royal Oak. And again, we emphasize those communities, not to say we want to become those communities, but to show you what the market is telling us in terms of what residents want. The reason people love Rochester is because of the ambiance of Rochester, because of the mix of retail and restaurants, and residents are seeking that, and we're providing a high quality product that's currently strongly in demand there. It's projected to be to affluent white collar professionals. We think that there will be a lot of empty nesters that want to retire or work from home within this community as well. It's located at 211 First Street between Diversion and Campbell, approximately 5.5 acres, currently vacant. This is an aerial view of it. And as Vidya mentioned, this was a industrial site, has contamination, still has contamination, and this will be a cleanup of the site. The site originally started out smaller. It started out as just around just over 3 acres. At the request of the Planning Commission, they suggested the project would be much better if we acquired the property to the south, which we did, and where we've incorporated a lot of the amenities that you'll see in the walking trail and the landscaping. So again, it was a collaborative effort, with the Planning Commission over a 4-year period on how this project has evolved into what it is today. Vidya reviewed this, and it's some questions. Originally, it was much larger. It was originally in excess of 140 units. Recent submissions were 134 units. And I'm talking about the apartment complex. At the request of planning, they wanted the scope and the density reduced, and it was reduced at the last meeting to 129 units. So to clarify, it's 129 units in the apartment built in 2 phases, and then 15 units of townhome residential in those 5 buildings. So 129 plus 15 units. And it's designed to promote the values in your Sustainable Rochester report. So it's a walkable, pedestrian-friendly community. City requested additional sidewalks, which are included, bike racks. You can see all the sidewalk connections outlined in red, where we're connecting to existing city infrastructure. So it's very well thought out on how this fits on the site. It's low density for a site like this in an urban area, and it fits well within the entire fabric of the community. Slide on the left is how phase 1 would be built. The building would be built, it'd be self-contained, and the landscaping to the park to the left of that would be finished with phase 1. So that day 1, when this is finished, it will be a finished looking product. That exterior wall would be completely finished. The townhomes would be built in phases as market demands. This first building would go up simultaneously with the apartment complex. As the first phase is leased out, phase 2 would be built on that green area you can see in the second slide, and then it would be completed at that. The park to the south, where you see all the green space, all the trees, the sidewalk, that would be built in phase 1. You'd have a completed infrastructure and completed landscape area when phase 1 is complete. Also completed in phase 1 would be all the underground utilities, completion of the east side of the building, the completion of the west side, including stormwater connections made, all the landscaping. The townhomes would be built in phases as well. We talked about 62 residents in phase 1, 67 for a total of 129 in phase 1 and 2. This site is overparked. 252 are required and 265 have been provided. State-of-the-art fitness center will be built within the development. Outdoor terraces, a business center, and this is becoming increasingly important. As many of you might be having Zoom calls from your home, or your family's there, this would have a business center within it that you could have Zoom calls within private common areas within the building. So it's something that's it was pre-planned prior to COVID and is really becoming a very important necessity and amenity. The yoga studio in it, a package room. Sometimes these are called Amazon rooms, but if any of you have experienced this as well, I know from personal experience, we seem to be getting package every day at home, a package every day from the office. And what we're doing in modern apartments now is building a specific package room so packages could be delivered safely and securely to the apartment complex, held within a room, and residents could go down and safely get their packages. So a very important amenity that we had planned for, but it's becoming even more important. Bike racks located within the units, animal wash station. This would be a pet-friendly community. Electric car charging stations built into the garage area, also an increasingly important component that a lot of the older apartments don't have. This would be truly a cutting-edge apartment in terms of design, quality, and amenities, and totally self-contained parking, not relying on any of the city parking. This is a view from the north, looking south. You can see it basically in a 2-phase development with a center area being built in phase 1. Some of the comments raised at the Planning Commission was to reduce the massing on the building, and this successfully did that. Whereas originally the building roof line went straight across. This is dipped down significantly, so lowered the massing very significantly. Reduction of units, changing of the material. So at the request of the Planning Commission, we actually had probably 3 of the meetings discussion generally about this issue. What's important to note and what was asked was the height of the building. This building sits 17 feet lower than the balance of the road coming south. So this building actually sits on a hole. So as you're looking at it, it looks high here, but over 2 of the stories are buried by the grade driving down the main road coming in. So the building is actually much lower than this shot appears. And we have a slide later on where we can show you that this is in line with the First Street lofts across the street. This is a building, or a view of the building from Rochester Road. There's a bridge on it. Quite frankly, you're driving the speed limit of 45 miles an hour, you're gonna be driving past the building. But you can see architecturally, it blends in nicely. There'll be mature landscaping day one, which will help on the screening. But the style and the architecture fit in with the surrounding buildings and the community as a whole. This is a view from the south. This would be the jogging trail that would be built, mature trees planted, and then the building in the background. The question was raised about the $75,000. To be important to note that the $75,000 is in addition to the many of the public amenities that we're building in as part of this development. One is the land cost that was put in over $1 million, requested to buy it to give this additional buffer and landscaping, landscaping of mature trees, putting in that sidewalk, landscaping this park area, and the $75,000. So there's a road, which we'll get back to the site plan, that goes around it. It's for the benefit. Sidewalks throughout the development. So what's important to note is the $75,000 is above and beyond a lot of these contributions. So it should be measured in that regard. The reason we tied it to $75,000 is it was in line with what, and it was actually greater than what previous projects had committed. It was a number that the Planning Commission was comfortable with and ultimately approved in their recommendation. This is the pocket park plan. The Planning Commission recommended that we add additional park benches. We relocated some trash receptacles, and you can see, it's a public benefit being built at the developer's cost in the initial phase. So high quality design, high quality materials, and just keeping for the public use of the property. This is a depiction of some of the riverfront place. We've been back and forth and took the advice of your planning consultant, Vidya, as well as the Planning Commission members. High quality materials, brick and limestone and fieldstone, high quality railing, dimensional shingles, and just again fitting in both within the community of what Rochester looks and feels like. This is the townhome design. Again, traditional in nature, high quality materials. It integrates beautifully with the neighborhood to the west. Each unit would be approximately 3,000 square feet each. Two car garages and driveways for guest parking, 3 bedrooms, 3 bath units. Optional elevators would be available for either handicapped or elderly people that basically want to live here for the balance of their life. So a really thoughtful and well thought out project. Private rooftop balconies and first floor balconies as well. This is kind of the history. Started back in 2017. McKenna provided a report on sustainability. Took a lot of those ideas and suggestions and incorporated in the plans. You can see the number of meetings that we had, and they were not just routine meetings, or they were very significant meetings, oftentimes lasting an hour to 2 hours worth of discussion. And each time you can see a very significant amount of time between meetings, and that was to go and spend a lot of time and energy and money with our various architectural and engineering consultants. So a lot of times between meetings, We had citizens participation meetings. We had a traffic impact study completed. And ultimately, we're pleased to say it was approved for recommendation by your planning commission this past summer. As mentioned, we've scored 16 out of 20 on your sustainability. Quite frankly, we can't, your sustainability doesn't really allow for a development like this to achieve much higher than an 18. So we're very pleased with the ultimate score of 16, which does qualify on your own sustainability scorecard. We started out originally at 8, and by a collaborative effort, earned the additional 8 points. So we're very pleased to present a project that meets your plan and meets your sustainability score. This is a little bit more detail. This is provided by your own consultants. This is a needed project, a needed product within the marketplace. It was identified there was a necessary increase of 20% increase in units. The target was to grow. It was to grow the tax rate. It was to have contribution towards the common areas. We meet the natural features protection. It's walkable. It's self-sustained from parking. It meets mobility. So basically, a very high bar to meet, and we're very pleased to have been able to meet it. The benefits to the city are cleaning up a contaminated site, incorporation of the open space on the south parcel, really a perfect balance between the nature. And it's not just for the use of this development, it's for the residents at large to be able to use the Clinton River Trail rather than just running across a vacant contaminated field as it currently exists. It's the removal of unhealthy trees and replacement with healthy, high quality trees, and a very significant financial contribution. We are pleased to answer any specific questions you have. Our traffic consultant and our engineer and our architectural consultant. So any questions either directed towards me, and I may call on the consultants, but thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Milia. Can you take down, there you go, thank you. Councilmember Bavacqua, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have one question regarding the increase in the cost of materials, and this project has been percolating for 4 years now. Does it still spec out? What does your financial performance look like? It must have changed drastically from the beginning.
We're comfortable with the numbers. You are correct. The bar has been raised high with all the requests for additional materials. We agreed to those and will continue to agree to those. There has been a very substantial increase in costs, and right now we're still comfortable with it, and we're proposing the materials that were approved by the Planning Commission, recommended and approved by the Planning Commission.
Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Milia. If you could clarify, what's your role on this team?
I'm a development consultant for the developer. I do not have an ownership interest. I'm one of the team members, no different than the traffic consultants or the architects or the engineers.
Okay, thank you. So then Vidya talked in detail about the project, and I know Planning Commission had a lot of discussion around timing and the phases. So could you clarify currently how the phases would work and what is the complete duration that we expect construction?
That was outlined in the development agreement. I'm happy to discuss it. The first phase, which would be the half of the apartment building, all the infrastructure, all the park, and the start of the townhomes would be built started within 2 years and would be completed within 4 years. It's then there's an obligation to build the second phase in the next 2 years and completed 2 years after that. So in total, if the market absorbs slowly, it would be an 8-year duration.
And that 8-year includes, if approved, then it's 2 years till you start and then 2 years to finish phase one. So 4 years for phase one,
Correct.
8 years total. So my question is, what can you do to compress that timing?
The extent, it's very expensive to have just a single phase there. So our goal would be to build it as fast as possible. So as soon as it at least is up, our goal would be to build phase two as fast as possible. So what we would actually do is it's subject to market. You don't want something that built just for the sake of building it that wouldn't be leased. So we're hoping to build it within a shorter period of time, but ask that for the proper protection.
All right, well, I'm not completely happy with that, but let's talk about the development agreement. So in the development agreement, we have, and this was also discussed quite a bit by Planning Commission, we have some security bonds in there. I also heard initially at Planning Commission that there's going to be cash finance. So now with the addition of the bonds, we have for water and sanitary sewer improvements for each phase, 110% of the cost. Driveway and parking lots for each phase, 110% of the cost. Completion of general improvements, 110% of the cost. And security to the city to allow for the raising of any buildings, including grading and grassing, if the developer abandons the project, to return it $1 million. So I'd just like to hear in some, not legal terms, but some general words, what is the developer's commitment to start and complete this project?
The developer's commitment is very substantial. Bought the property to the south at the suggestion and request of the Planning Commission, so it owns the land. The commitment in the development agreement is very clear that we would have to bond for the infrastructure, bond for the parking, bond for the parks. So if for some reason it was abandoned, it's never been a concern, but if it were, that the city could finish that and the infrastructure would be done. If for some unforeseen reason the steel went up in the building and the project was abandoned, city attorney had requested $1 million demolition bond. So if the project were abandoned, the city could draw on that bond and tear the building down and restore it, and you'd have a park area. So first of all, you have the developer with every incentive in the world that's investing tens of millions of dollars to do it and to complete it. If something unforeseen happened and the building was not completed, then you have the right to call on a demolition bond and tear it down. But we don't see that as a likelihood, but that is there for the security of the city.
Anything further, Mayor Pro Tem?
Not now.
Okay. So can I just real quick clarify? So it's going to take you 2 years before you start to build and then 2 years to build it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, we would have up to do that. I mean, we have engineering to do. We still have permits to do. We have other approvals to get. But it gives that as an outside date to do it. And what you don't want is somebody to start it. You have a situation where you have COVID, the governor shuts down the state, you have construction that's halted, you have things that are beyond the control of the developer. So we've built in a little bit of flexibility and time, but there's a gun to the head of the developer, by the city development agreement and just by the practicality of the market. Developers don't like to build things slowly. So it would be built as fast as possible. The developer has a 40-year track record of completing developments.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Milia, for your presentation, and I appreciate your comments and answering these questions. I want to follow up on Mayor Pro Tem Salvia's questions. When I looked at the agreement also, which I've gone through everything that we've received and read everything, this 8 years is a challenge, is a challenge to me. So I go back to your presentation and I go, okay, you mentioned that you are doing the townhomes of Caswell and Troy, the Hazleton and Royal Park. How long did it take to get the townhomes of Caswell done? Did you ask for 8 years for them, and it got done in 2? I know the Hazelton and Royal Park is probably just starting, but the 8 years just we have a tight area there, and we don't want it to be under construction for 8 years. We've got people who are living there as residents. We have people who are business people who use the adjacent buildings. And then you mentioned First Street Lofts across the street was done in, I think, less than 2 years. So I know there's an incentive from you to get this done quickly, but 8 years just seems like a long period of time. And is that your track record?
Well, again, and those other communities, whether it's First Street Lofts or the Caswell, those are much smaller projects. And Caswell was built within a couple-year period. So the track record is very fast, very efficient. But you're talking about a large development here that could be built in phases. And the way it's designed is that the first phase is not an unfinished product. You don't have a vacant parking lot. You don't have a skeleton of a building. You have a finished, developed product. Assuming that the market continues on the way it's continuing on, the next development, the next phase would continue on with that. But this gives it a little time to do that and for the market to absorb it. This is just as much for the protection of the city that allows for a feasible development period, but it still gives you the leverage to hold the developer's feet to the fire, so to speak, in terms of a time frame.
You mentioned the Caswell, you did it in 2 years. The Caswell is 74 units. The first phase, I think, is 62 units. So why can't that be done in 2 years versus the 4 years you're asking for?
Well, it can be, but this is a part of a start, lease up and then completion. I think you're putting, with all due respect, you're trying to put a time frame on a developer to potentially force something to be unsuccessful, to force something to skimp on quality, or to force something to violate it. It's not a great period of time when you're talking about something of this magnitude and designed in the phases that it would. So where all the infrastructure is completed day one, that's where I think the focus should be. And if it takes a couple extra years to build that last phase, you're not subjecting residents to 8 years worth of construction. Once it's up, it's up, and then it would be leased out. So I think we're focusing on a number and a time frame, and the important focus should be on reality and what's going to be built there. The Planning Commission was very thoughtful in discussing this and negotiating it and making sure that the first phase had a completed side, and was very careful that the landscaping was done, and was very careful. So it was a very thought out process, and that's how we ultimately arrived at the time frame that we did.
Councilmember Sage.
I think Councilmember Harrison and Bavagua had their hands up before me.
Councilmember Bavagua.
Yeah, I guess it just seems to me like this would make a lot more sense if we were only approving the first stage instead of having this project that's multi-phase that we've not really done in the city before. With so many if comes, it makes it a very difficult decision to make all at one time.
Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Melia, for joining us tonight. It's been nice to hear your perspective on this project and your insights. During this construction phase, if we allow you to build to the sight line, what would your plan be for construction equipment? Would you require lane or road closures during construction?
Well, again, this was raised at the Planning Commission, and what we had agreed to, and what we'd always agreed to, is work with your Public Works Department, work with the fire, work with police, and design it with safety. We're fortunate enough that we have a staging area on the south side, so that we can do the majority of the staging and construction from the south side. So it would be a very minimal impact to the city versus a lot of the other buildings that were built in the city. You have a lot of road shutdowns. This would not require a lot of road shutdowns. It would require some staging, when the masonry was going up on the front of the building. But because the site is so large and self-contained, and we're not building on the whole thing, it would be predominantly self-contained. But we'd also work with your building department for design a construction traffic plan and design an overall plan.
Another question I have is, the original plans showed a pool, or I understood it to be a pool. That spoke, I thought, to the quality of the building itself. I think I researched you would need a concrete podium, and potentially it'd be like concrete built for 3 stories and the other stories would be stick built. Does taking away the pool change the fabric or the construction of the building itself by just having it be a terrace? Would it still be concrete or stick built on those bottom levels?
So it would still be potential for the pool on the west side of the development. And it's what's called a concrete podium. So it's a very high quality, very expensive quality material of the main floor infrastructure where the parking is. The upper floors would be wood construction, which is traditional on buildings this size up to 5 stories, and then all masonry exterior.
So with removing the plans for the pool, that does not change what you just described?
Correct. It would still be the same quality construction. There'd still be potentially a pool on the west side. It was relocated from the east side to the west side. It's based on some of the discussions of the Planning Commission, potentially not having to see that from Rochester Road.
Thank you for elaborating on that for me. And my last question, if I may, Mayor, is in regards to the demographics that you'll be marketing this apartment complex to. I know that you touched on it already. I'm curious what you expect the cost per unit to be for potential residents. And then if you'll just maybe speak again on the demographics that you're wanting to attract for this development.
So the market, these would be market rent apartments. They would be an alternative to somebody that, you know, lives in a house there and wants to downsize from the house and live in an apartment. So it would be market rent apartments with in the range of what other units in the area are renting for. Our demographics, we're expecting a professionally employed person, whether that's a younger person or an older person or retired person. You know, we expect, you know, the typical Rochester demographic in terms of employment.
So you don't feel comfortable giving like a number or a price per unit right now?
No.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Amelia, for indulging us with these questions. So I have a few as well to piggyback off of my colleagues. So we talked about phase 1, and the drawings show a common area between phase 1 and phase 2. So during the construction of phase 1, would you also would you build in that common area during phase 1?
Yes, and we committed to that. Not only would the entire common area to the south be built with the landscaping, the park, and the walk, where phase 2 would go would be an interim finished landscaped park. So that's, you know, we emphasize this, that although it's built in phases, everything would be done visually from phase 1.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned a list of amenities. Would those be built during phase 1 as well?
Some of them would, as we said, the central common area where many of those amenities are held would be built to that. If a pool is built on the west wing, that would be built probably in phase 2. But many of the other common area amenities would be built in phase 1, and all the exterior amenities for the park and landscaping would be built in phase 1.
Right. I'm just looking at the list and I'm just wondering which ones you'd exclude, thinking that some of those might be helpful in you leasing the units.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So the list of amenities, have you identified those that you would not complete during phase 1?
I think it would really just be the pool if we ultimately do the pool, but the balance of the amenities are intended to be built in phase 1.
Okay. The pocket park that you showed us, where is that located on the site plan? Or is that part of the Clinton River Landing project?
That's on the northeast corner of the site. So that's really for the benefit of the public. The public would get just as much use out of that as would the residents.
Okay, thank you. And a question about, and this might be more directed to city administration, what's the current PASER ratings on first and diversion?
These are ratings.
I can answer that. They're pretty good, actually. They're especially First Street all the way to Mill was reconstructed, so I've got to believe they're 8s. So we would obviously video all that, make sure that when this project was done, it didn't knock the. I know where you're going here. I think, yeah, if they reduce the PASER rating, it's their responsibility to bring it back up to the existing. We document that with videos, even the infrastructure, the storm sewer, it's all cameraed, all that stuff, so we know the existing conditions, Councilman, and then any detriment that might happen from that would have to be rectified.
And that's documented in the agreement between the city and the developer?
Correct.
Okay. The parking spaces, Mr. Milliot, would those, during phase one, are you just planning on installing the ones specific to phase one, or would you put in all the spaces at that time?
Well, we would put in all of the surface parking lots, and obviously we would some of the phase two deck spots wouldn't be done, but phase one would be self-sustaining and overparked, and phase two would obviously be self-sustaining and overparked as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions of the developer? Councilmember Bavacqua.
I guess this is a bit of a question for administration, but it's based on the developer's comments. If this project were to be abandoned, I guess how would we legally define that? I mean, I do appreciate that, although it wasn't considered at the beginning of this planning process, that we did get a development agreement put in place and there was bonding put in place. There was none of that initially offered up, and it was a bit of I would say a struggle over the years to get that put in place. But I've read through that development agreement. I don't remember seeing anything that defines an abandonment. There's some process for if deadlines aren't met, that we can pursue legal actions, that there could be stop work put in place, but I don't know if we've legally defined what an abandonment is, which allows us to, take different controls.
So Mayor, maybe Attorney Crott could step in there.
Mr. City Attorney, welcome tonight.
Hey, good evening. Good evening. So that's a great question. Now it's going to be, there's provisions in the development agreement that talked about if the city believes that the developer has not complied with those types of things, that it would actually have a show cause type hearing at city council. So the city council would be involved in that process to declare, to listen to the developer, because that would be a big step. To your point, that's a big step to declare a project abandoned. So the process in the agreement is the city would notice this up at a city council meeting to tell the developer this is where we see the issue is. And then city council would say, here's what we believe is the remedy. And if the developer does not meet that remedy, as far as if it's a timing issue, then the city would then be in its right to pursue the letter of credit, or the guarantee, the dollars that are being held as security. So it is a big step. That's why I believe in the development agreement, that's why it's baked in there. They have a city council meeting, so everybody's on the same page on that.
Councilmember Bavacqua.
Thank you. Maybe I misunderstood it, but it seemed to me that at that point, then the developer has the opportunity to, force legal action, or that judges would have to be involved, or there would have to be some sort of adjudication. That it doesn't seem like council would be able to declare a project abandoned. And I ask this because you know, in Van Buren Township, the developer was involved in a ongoing decade-long legal dispute over an unfinished property. So I just want to make sure that, you know, if this does move forward, that we have all our ducks in a row and we're protecting the residents and the taxpayers in our city.
If I may supplement that, Mr. Mayor, the city enforcement is on page 9 of the agreement, paragraph M as in Mary. One of the items that is provided for right in the agreement is that the city may enter the property and perform the obligations and take the corrective measures. So the permission, number 2 is initiate legal action, and number 3 is the issue the stop work order, like Mr. Bavakwa said. But there are direct abilities for the city to, after the review process, the time to cure, because that's very standard in a contract to have. If you put someone on notice that you think they're deficient, they would have a time to cure that. And that's that first part where the city council gets involved at some point. And then, but there are direct remedies in the agreement talking about the city has the ability that we can stand behind this agreement. You're right. If this is a huge, it's going to cost $750,000 to raise improvements, and it may be legal action, but that's no different than if we didn't have a development agreement. This is actually provides far more protections to the city than without one. The city hasn't had development agreements for many of these projects. So this is, I would say, the protections that the city has is probably more than the other projects that it's come before.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I address a couple of points at this point?
Mr. Milia.
Mr. Bavakwa raised a couple of questions. I think Mr. Crott answered them very well. That what was recommended here and negotiated by the Planning Commission, ultimately by the city attorney, is much greater than the city's used to getting on other projects, and quite frankly, much greater than any cities require. So it gives you a belt and suspenders approach. First of all, the developer is going to be personally liable on millions of dollars to get this done and committed. So it doesn't take these obligations lightly, but it does give the city the protection that if for some reason it got abandoned, it gives the city the ability to return it to a beautiful park here. So we think that issue has been, it was a high bar to meet. It was negotiated, and we've agreed to it. Mr. Bavakwa raised a question that was raised a couple times during the Planning Commission, and the facts are wrong. Mr. Randazzo bought out a project in Van Buren that was failed and finished it on his own accord. So he wasn't part of a failed project. He was part of the white knight that came in and finished that project. So I don't think that should taint this development. Got a 40-year history and a phenomenal track record of completing developments in this area. We've agreed to the various bonds and additional security, which quite frankly go far and beyond what other developers have been required on similar projects. I think your city attorney's done a nice job in suggesting and requesting and quite frankly requiring a lot of issues that are not required traditionally, but we've agreed to them.
Very good. Further, Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Milley. I had a couple of follow-up questions. You had mentioned the townhomes at Caswell being a 2-year project, or that's what the timing resulted. And you also provided a caveat to that, then that you were able to lease up the units. I'm assuming you're going to look at that operating procedure in the same way for phase 1, right? So if you don't have commitment, then phase 1 could potentially be more of a protracted build. Is that correct?
No, phase 1 wouldn't be a protracted build. It's not, you don't build it and lease them as you go. I mean, you build it from start to finish as fast as possible, and then you lease the unit. So phase 1 is a single building that would be built. It's not like a subdivision where one house gets built and another house gets built. This would be built all at once as fast as possible. If for some reason phase 1 was built and at least slow, You don't know it from the outside standpoint because the building is 100% done and finished. And if for some reason phase 2 never got started because of market conditions, you have a built-in clause that prevents the developer from doing it, but you have a beautifully finished project with a park there where phase 2 would have gone. So again, the protection is for the city. The developer has every incentive to build this as fast as possible because the profit's in the second phase.
Thank you for that clarification. So we had talked earlier about, and you had mentioned it in your presentation, about a $75,000 benefit to the city. So in previous special projects that have come before council, we in the Planning Commission have put it in more in broader terms. Case in point, the Royal Park, that the developer would provide sidewalks and landscaping. So would Randazzo as a developer be amenable to revising that with the city, the agreement to say complete the Clinton River landing project as part of the benefit to the city, concurrent with approval to this?
Yeah, again, not without knowing the cost. We made the financial contribution really for the benefit of the city and for the flexibility of the city so that the city can direct those dollars. So, we have, had that been the direction of the Planning Commission and had the city been able to tell us what those projects were specifically and what the costs would be, perhaps we could be in a position to do it. But this was kind of following the direction of the Planning Commission to do a lot of the improvements. We're building the pocket park. We're developing the land behind us. We're doing the sidewalk. We're putting in a new road, and we're putting in another $75,000 to be used at the discretion of the city. So we thought that the flexibility was more important to the city, and for the city to use those dollars as it wanted to within those ideas, rather than just agree to something that we don't know what's going to cost.
I guess I would direct that question then back to the city. Is there timing associated to this? Is there?
So maybe a question to Mr. Banda is for that. I'm paraphrasing. I think I'm putting words in your mouth, Councilman Sage, which I shouldn't. But I'll try. Is there, for that $75,000, is there a project that can be done that just is a completed project that we can tell people that we've completed the project? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Kind of. So, Mr. Banda, is there something?
Yeah, I understand the question. I appreciate that. We have to make sure, again, through the Planning Commission and working with Mr. Crott, that it directly is a amenity to the developer. We can't pick something 3 miles away and say, go finish.
Oh, no, correct. But something on this site that
I think personally, looking at the plan, that video or Andy popped up there, the amphitheater, the rain chains, that's about all there is to do. It probably can complete that whole project, quite frankly. And the mural, that was a collaboration with the schools and stuff. So it seems like that's plenty of money to finish the last few things on that project. It's just excavate down and put in seating into the hill, and then the rain chains come off the bridge. We have to work with MDOT, and then the mural, and it's pretty much done. That whole pocket park is done. So that amount of money probably can do all of that. That's the best I can offer.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you. So, Mr. Milia, thank you very much for your presentation and answering all the questions tonight. I'm excited about what the project has become over time. I appreciate what you and the developer have created for the community and the steps you're taking to actually clean up a contaminated site yourself, instead of trying to utilize funds from the community to do so, and your contributions to better our community overall. as far as the dynamics, as far as building this and worrying about whether or not it's going to, end up not having, or become a failed project. I do know that this is something many people have been looking for. I am in real estate, and I do know people are looking for a place to live in a walkable downtown community. I've seen through the years many uncompleted projects, so I understand the concerns as well. However, you do fit a very unique need for our community and those who have been searching for that. So, and I do appreciate it being noted as well that we do have a lot of apartment complexes currently in the city that are very old. And we do need, over time, need to bring in new good development, which you clearly are. So I appreciate the steps taken as well, because my concerns right off the bat were close to the trail. I've seen other projects in neighboring communities where they have started construction near near our trails, and they just wiped out all the trees and that. And here you have stepped it up to actually beautify that area better than it's probably would have ever seen otherwise. So I appreciate all these steps that you've taken. A lot of the comments or questions I had have been answered. One of the things when I first looked at this that I didn't really care for was also addressed, and that was the visual from the bridge, because it's different, right? It's something that we're not used to seeing. I do know that there's a lot of things that this project could actually lead our community into becoming better, and it can actually be probably the strong, it could be the footing to begin more and better creation of areas down here that have been abandoned over time. So I'm not concerned about the questions of this project failing, only knowing that this is something that the area has been without for quite some time. And everything that goes on the market right now has been renting very quickly. So for that reassurance, I just wanted to state those things. Thank you very much for the project as stated and presented today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Any further questions, Mr. Milia? Okay, Mr. Milia, thank you. You might want to hold on. Just what else is there to do on a Monday night anyway? During COVID, right? Just kidding. So, okay. So next we are going to open the public hearing. So at 8:43, I'm going to open the public hearing. We have had a lot of correspondence. I would like to ask the city clerk, Leanne O'Connor, just to comment on a couple late arriving correspondence from citizens. Leanne O'Connor, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. In council's packet, you did receive correspondence that we had up through the date the packet was put together. Over the weekend and even up through late this afternoon, we did receive 4 more. They were sent over to your emails in 2 batches at about 2 o'clock today and at about 5:30 today. So council, that has been forwarded to council for your review.
Very good. And I think a lot of council people have received those, and also, we received individual emails from various citizens in town. So we have had a lot of correspondence. Okay, so next we are going to open it up to public input. Anybody who would like to speak, we will give you time. I ask you try to keep it as brief as possible, just because I think we have a lot of people who would like to speak. So without further ado, I'd like to open up to public comment. So Siona, can you or Leanne, whoever is doing that, help. Who is the first person who'd like to speak? Because I can't see.
It's okay, I got it. The caller last digit's 202.
Thank you.
And so I'm sorry. Just for the record, just state your name, please, and where you live, and welcome to our meeting.
Well, good evening, everybody. Patricia Kane, Kane, 817 West 4th Street, Rochester, Michigan.
Right. Well, Pat, we certainly know you.
Yeah, back, you sure do. Well, first of all, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a bit of a mess. I can sign a lease there for 3 years or 5 years for an unknown amount of money. And I'm going to move in with construction, maybe being all next door, noise, fumes, trucks, all the time. I can expire my lease at the end of 3 years and move out, and the same stuff's still going to be going on. When we elect officials to represent a community. And when a part of a community stands up and says why this is not good for them, their quality of life or their neighborhood, we really need to listen. A special project comes to us as a benefit to a neighborhood, if it's going to be there, not as something that's detrimental. I do not believe that traffic study. I never will. I do not like the height of this building at all. It is too dense and too much mass. We're allowing a setback that is 1 foot from the sidewalk that's a wall. What's to stop this city from saying the multi-family dwelling on Helen and 2nd Street can't be raised in a 5-story put up? What's to say you can deny on Main Street a 5-story building, an addition? We're setting precedences. We have whatever's being presented lately to us as residents, these, quote, conceptual drawings, do not look what's being put up. We have an eatery that ends up being barked up against a wall. We have a cleaners going up that doesn't have a setback that is huge. And we had Cedar Brook. This is impacting neighborhoods. It's impacting quality of life. That is a huge problem. It's also impacting natural and nature. We have water that we should celebrate as natural and nature. And what are we doing again? Taking down everything around it and not leaving anything for nature, which is what this town and this city craves. Next, that marketing study is off as far as who and what's going to be marketed to. First of all, Michigan is looking to bring in manufacturing jobs. You cannot exist on a computer working in an administrative type of capacity and make money. You can't be that type of servicing. You don't make the money. The United States is looking to bring back manufacturing. The most successful countries out there with wealth are manufacturing. So this, I'm going to sit on a computer and not commute, is wrong. There's going to be commuting. Next, move out of your house here in Rochester and move down there. Yeah, okay. If I've got that much money with a $3,000 square foot house, I'm going to be living in the South in winter, and I'm going up to my cabin or cottage in North, and that's what people do. That is another thing. Next, the foot traffic. You're not really going to have that much foot traffic because we can't even find out what that's going to rent for yet. And I'm going to tell you, young people today are not making the income one thinks they are. They're not. The jobs aren't here. So for that kind of income, you have to have disposable income to spend. So how much money is going to be spent? I don't know. How many people are actually going to walk up that hill into town? That remains to be seen. That marketing is off as to the market they're going to target. Putting up a building and then asking people to live in it while you're doing good construction, it does not fly. And 8 years is too long of a time to be tearing up everything. I will be honest with you. Next, we looked at the capacity of servicing, even with water, built on the backs of the taxpayers that have been paying rent here. And a developer comes in and can tap into that capacity to service their entity. We don't get that break, do we? How much taxes are we going to realize off of this in the next 5 or 6 or 7 years? And if we don't, let's go even 5 years out. Let's project 5 years. How much? And what's it going to take to make it up? I listen to everybody standing up and telling Planning Commission no for a lot of reasons. I know the people have come forward several times. I've seen the signs. I've talked to them. And I'll tell you what, I'd ante up a little bit extra. If you're just looking at money for shortfalls in budgets, be happy as a taxpayer in this city to protect my other residential neighborhoods, because I know they do the same for me, for their health, their safety, their quality of life. We market quality of life and then we take it away. It's the same old story. In your backyard, not mine. Nobody on city council that will vote yes is going to be impacted by that. Not one of you. You're insulated by location or you're insulated by money. You're not going to be there. What about the people that are? That's who you have to think about. A special project is not supposed to negatively impact residential or neighborhood. The next thing is this. If it's all about developers, when is Rochester going to do what it should be doing? The people we elected are to represent us. We live here. We're the ones that are spending our money here. We're the ones that pay all the salaries here. You have to represent us. And we're being weighted towards development. That building's too tall. And that conceptual drawing is not going to look at all like that. Not one bit. Those trees will never be mature or big or tall enough to hide the monstrosity of the density of that building. And I think it sets a precedence. And I'm sorry it ever got to this point, but I'm going to go right back to planning where it should have been stopped initially, because they had the right to. Every single thing they put through, special project, and they shoved it. You can't just look at the money. And it's time that we took the city and we started to say, start looking at the residents and quality of life. That's what we're here for, is quality of life. You don't see the developers living next to their stuff, do you? And there's a reason. Do you think they want that next to their big house? Do you think they want to live next to that? They don't. And the people that sell that land, if it's high priced and they put a lot of money into it, well, you know, that's their problem. You can buy a handbag for $50 or you can buy one for $500 if you've got the money. But here's the difference. Those people take their money. They don't even live in Rochester because it's not good enough. It doesn't have what they want. Do not compare us ever to Birmingham. And do not compare us to Royal Oak, but we're turning into a Royal Oak because of the way the buildings are going. So I will tell you right now, vote your conscience, but if it was me sitting at one of those seats, I would be voting it no, and I would be voting it down. I would look at the quality of life, I'd protect the residents, and I wouldn't be setting a precedence with such a high, stark building such as that, without even knowing what that rent's going to be, without even having a tangible market to even tap into, because that market that's being talked and bandied about, that's germane. It's everybody says the same thing. It means nothing at this point. So I would hope you take that into consideration, because you know what? Maybe if not, that can be in your backyard next to your house and you can live with it instead of those people down there living with it. And when you go underneath the bridge, all this talk about doing everything, well, that's just great, because you've got do haul and keep going down the road. Okay, it's a different picture. And if you want to have the walkability to Rochester, no, come on up that steep hill. I've gone down it enough, okay? But I would tell you the building is too big. It shouldn't be allowed to be up against the sidewalk practically. And it's too tall and it's too dense. 8 years, 5 years, using us as a guinea pig, put it up. Let's see what the market does. It's playing with us. And it's too much for this city to take on at this point. If there's shortfalls in budgets and you're looking for money, then you ought to come and talk to the taxpayers and the residents. We pay 78% of it. Ask us how we feel. And we can either tell you where you can cut it from the budget to make up the shortfall or what we're willing to pay. Okay? But I hope, I'm sorry, I'm voting. I would want a no. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pat. Next comment, Siona.
Yes, caller with Jenny 12. Can you unmute?
Did I do a good job?
You did a good job, Pat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Fiona?
Yeah, Jenny 12, you're free to speak. They are unmuted.
Jenny 12? Jenny 12.
We can move on. There is someone that just says iPad. You are free to speak.
iPad. We sure we're doing it correctly?
It's
So-
up to them to unmute.
Do they need to do anything on their side?
They have to press either *6 or if they're on the phone, but I believe they just aren't on the meeting, so it's up to them to unmute.
Like they have their hand up. Does that mean anything, Sienna?
That's why I called on them and pressed the button to ask to unmute. It's up to them. We can move along.
It'd be helpful to describe how to unmute.
Yeah, she's trying to, so we have, okay, so now,
Mr.
Okay, I'm just hanging up.
Hundinger.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kunlinger, you are on, please, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. First name Brian, last name Kundinger, Kundinger. I live at 625 First Street, just up the hill from the proposed project. And I think I attended the Planning Commission last summer Zoom call, and there was a traffic study that was presented, and if there's been a new one, I haven't seen it, but the concern that we living here on First Street have is the number of vehicles that are going to be added to the mix is going to be astronomical. And because First Street to Castell to Harding to Livernois is a natural cut through. I know they say most of the traffic is going to go east, but when you have Auburn Hills immediately to the west and Oakland University immediately to the west, most of the traffic, I believe, is going to go west, not east. And so question I have is, what are we looking to do to slow down the traffic on First Street or force people not to use Fourth Street and go out to University and go west on University? Because putting that amount of cars back on First Street, I mean, right now, we had the police put a speed sign up out in front of our house within the last couple of months, and cars are going 50 and 60 miles an hour on this street, First Street.
Right.
And it worries me that we're going to be bringing in all these new cars that are going to be traveling down our road, and it's just, it's an accident waiting to happen. It really is. I'm all for progress. I think it's I like the design. I like everything about it. I think it's great. I don't want to, I don't want to take me wrong. My big concern is, what is the city council doing to address the increase in traffic on First Street, on Castell, on Harding, Second Street? Because there's no stop signs on First Street, everybody comes up First Street. And so is there a chance that we could have some stop signs added to make it more difficult for people to start going 60 miles an hour?
Yeah, so those are great questions. Mr. City Manager, we actually have talked about this. So Mr. City Manager, can you talk about the city's plans for traffic calming there?
Yep, and I'll also have Deputy City Manager Nick Banda as well. So in the development agreement, there is striping, the addition of a stop sign. The striping is similar to what was done on Ludlow, which again narrows the road down so that cars on one side, have really a delineated area to park. And then the addition of the stop sign. So when you have a narrow road, the traffic consultants will talk about how that will drive the speed of individuals down just because it's a more narrow road. And then the addition of the stop sign is also spelled out within the development agreement. Nick, I don't know if there's anything that.
Yep, no, I would agree with that. And we've done and we'll continue to do enforcement there. And just so Mr. Kundinger understands, that's not a cut through to go from there to Livernois. That is a collector road designed that way to disperse traffic. Not everybody would go that way, and not everybody would go east either. So it's been like that since the city was built. That is a design route to get to Livernois. Just Manager Wing had it right. The police department, Chief Shettenhelm could speak if he wants, but the recommendation wasn't for a bunch of stop signs like on Elizabeth. Chief would educate you to, the more stop signs you put, people race between them. I don't know if they can make 50 or 60 or if they are or not. We would do appropriate traffic calming items, and the developers agree to pay for that.
Where, Mr. City Manager, where is that stop sign going to be? Do you know?
Nick, I think in the development, or maybe
At
attorney-
Wilcox just makes most sense.
Yeah, I think it's actually spelled out in the development agreement.
Okay,
that,
I'm sorry.
Yep, and it again also notes that the developer will be paying for the striping, so that traffic calming along with the stop sign, with the post.
We have a map we can show.
I don't know if there's a map, although I believe it's in the text, like I said, of the development agreement. Maybe while we're asking other questions, we can maybe pull up that map.
Councilman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted a quick clarification. Thank you. Just quick clarification. The narrowing of the street that the city manager is talking about is not a physical narrowing. It is just a visual narrowing based on some striping put on the asphalt.
That's correct.
Correct. And that's what we did on Ludlow, I think.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I ask just a couple more questions real quick? So Wilcox, that's at the very top of the hill. So that's probably about the best place to put it. I know over on Ludlow and Woodward, they've put up those electronic radar signs that show your speed. I noticed when they put the portable sign out in front here on First Street, that does slow people down, because when it starts flashing that you're going 45 or 50, people do tend to slow down. So is there a possibility, along with the stop sign, that we could get one of those electronic signs to warn people of their speed so that they're aware of that? Second question is, what is the plan for the construction vehicles? Can they be routed not down First Street, but down Division or some other route, so that they're not, pounding our windows as they're driving by with heavy equipment on them?
Mayor, if you will.
Yep.
The answer to that is yes. We will not. We don't want those on residential streets. We did that even in Rochester Hills. We work with them when they're building the subdivision. We eliminated them from going through our street. So yes, we can have them come off of Main Street down and around. So the answer to that is yes.
And then the reason why the police department actually has the temporary mobile unit there is to give us some of that data. And then we would again investigate. What we were able to do with Ludlow is actually work with the residents there to find a location that we were able to purchase one of those solar powered radar speed signs. But the first step really is to gain that additional data, and that's why we place out the bigger, larger one that the police have, that mobile unit, as well as have additional police enforcement checking, and just having the police actually physically there also does, along throughout the rest of our community, does reduce. And then when tickets get written, that also does reduce the speeding.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have now person with the iPad.
Yeah. So
and then again, and just real quickly, name and address, and then also just really just kind of just your comments, not as many questions, just comments for the council. Thank you.
You got it. I'll make it quick. Hello, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Bishar Iwas, 111 South Street, 532 South Rochester Road, and 135 South Street. I've been in the area since 1991. Had a business there. My kids grew up in the Rochester area. Long story short is there's number one with what we're going through right now. The additional people moving to Rochester, and I've seen Rochester develop through the years and became the Rochester that we are of today, that people talk about everywhere, including in Florida. Adding this there, they're going to walk up the streets, and it's not hard walking up that hill. Actually, it's a workout. Okay. And it's not that bad going up there. And there's two ways to go up there. The other thing is, I don't think there'll be heavy traffic because people are going to use diversion and come home. That's the fastest way. This is the way I go home too. They're not going to use the side streets or First Street, what everybody's talking about. The amount of business it's going to give us, and that's a contaminated piece. And I remember when it was contaminated. And have you guys ever walked down that the trail at night? There's no lighting. It's scared. My wife will not walk down there without me walking with her. And sometimes we do it in the summertime, walk all the way up to Livernois or down to Livernois. I think having that development there is going to make it a lot safer for everybody on that, walkway. Please consider it. Please go ahead and do it. The gentlemen, they've been working on it since 2017. I've seen it develop, and it's going to make a big change in that area. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see Jenny 12 has your hand up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that earlier.
No problem.
My name's Jennifer Kreider, and I live at 503 First Street, which is about 2 blocks away from the proposed development. And I wrote a letter to all the council members, and I appreciate the people who were able to get back to me. As somebody who's lived on First Street for 2.5 years now, I agree with the person who was talking from 625 First Street that the traffic here is insane. I never knew what a busy street it was. And I have an 11-year-old, and it's really not safe for her to play in the front yard because of that volume of traffic. So seeing this proposed development that is enormous in scale makes no sense for this area. I understand that a special use has to be permitted to allow this, and I don't agree with that. I understand that it's private property and they can do with it what they want, but I think something of this scale is too much for this area, both in terms of the roads and in terms of for the residents who live here. And I hope that when you vote for this, you consider that the quality of life for the people who already live here, not just about the quality of the life who might be moving into here, but those of us who are already here and really enjoy being here. And don't want this big building or that many people to come into this area. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us, and hopefully you guys vote no on this.
Thank you very much. Next, we have M. Grammatico.
Thank you. My name is Michael Grammatico. My home
Welcome,
address is
Michael.
3139 Bay Point Drive in Rochester Hills. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to say I respect everyone's opinion. I think this is a positive project for the city of Rochester. I enjoy with my wife and little ones going to Rochester, especially in the summertime. And I guess what would be the end game for this property if this weren't to be built? We have a developer coming in to put in a beautiful building, clean up contaminated land, clean up, let's say, the river walk. So if this doesn't get approved, what would be the end game with this property that will stay contaminated, and what will drive more people to the downtown? Not just the restaurants, but the shops that are there as well. So I think this is a very important project for the city of Rochester. I think it's beautiful. And I think that this will continue the growth of not just the city of Rochester, but downtown. And being compared to Birmingham and Royal Oak isn't a bad thing. Royal Oak was non-livable, so to speak, before the skylofts were built in about 2002 or 2003. Then the restaurants came in, more shops came in, better quality of life. So I know people don't want a Royal Oak, Rochester, and things of that nature, but it's not a bad comparison to be to Birmingham or Royal Oak. This is a positive project. Hopefully you look on it favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Siona, anything new?
Yes, so Mr. Cutterson is he was having some issues with the raise hand feature, but he is available to speak now.
Our old friend, former city council person, former planning commission member, former mayor pro tem, former mayor, Mr. Cuthbertson, welcome.
Wow, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I appreciate the introduction. I was just trying to be Jeff Cuthbertson tonight, and the guy who has his office at 345 Diversion Street next door here, and also appearing on behalf of Mr. Russell and First Street Lofts tonight. I too appreciate the presentation, the second public hearing here at City Council, and the diversity of thought that's coming before you. I can uniquely empathize with what you're working through. Having said that, I think that the project has made some progress, and I think that's commendable on one hand. But I do think there are some further steps to make something here that could become a real positive for the community. Is not that far from reach. Just for trying to lay some groundwork, just so you're aware, if you take the north facade of First Street Loft, so your backs to University, you're at the top of the hill, and you look at that side of First Street Lofts, and then you take that view and you drop it down on First Street on the north facade of this development, and you can fit not quite 3 First Street Lofts wide across there. And if you take the top of the roof of First Street Lofts, and I can't quite find the true dimension of the top of the roof on this property, but if you just kind of use a ruler next to the measurements that are there, it looks like this building, north facade to north facade, is about 15 or 16 feet taller than First Street Lofts. So just the scale and the massing is substantial. And I just hope that it can be related with something that people can see and understand today. So having noted that, First Street Lofts was built in 16 months. So a well-capitalized, motivated developer can get things done. And the notion of an 8-year time horizon here really leaves my client and me sort of at a loss for words. 8 years is would seem like an impossibility to most thoughtful people. Putting an area through uncertainty and construction for that period of time seems wholly unreasonable. One of the major issues, of course, isn't the cost of construction. That I think it was suggested that what the city has quasi required for materials has driven the cost up. In fact, it's the cost of construction as a general matter has been going up 10 and 12% over the last 4 or 5 years. So the costs aren't being driven by the city in any large degree. And in fact, the approved materials at the Planning Commission here are cheaper than the materials that were required of First Street Lofts. So I think if you're looking at this from a phasing standpoint, it's driven by a use of capital and cash flowing a leased up apartment building, driving decisions about the next building being built. Meanwhile, the public's wondering what's happening, and construction happens, potentially over an 8-year period. That is not what I think is in the best interest of the community in any meaningful way. The development agreement itself seems like it could be strengthened as I look at it, and it would seem that some of the traffic impacts beyond the traffic calming that we've heard about, construction management, road closures, are all things that could be addressed and brought into that agreement now versus an administrative matter later. And I think that would go a long ways to showing people the detailed nature of what that agreement would hold, particularly if you've got a project that could be out there for 8 years, people changing, coming in and out of the management of this project in the city on the developer side. Anchoring to something more substantial would seem to make sense. I will say that, of the project that's before you, the townhomes are pretty handsome buildings. It's pretty well done, and the developer has a track record of doing nice townhomes. But on the whole, the massing of the apartment section of it still remains too large. That primarily is a planning commission consideration. But when you sort of boil that down and get to, is this a special project that merits the kind of deviations from the zoning ordinance that you're talking about? Has it returned the on-site and off-site bargain that warrants the community to go through 8 years, God forbid, of uncertainty? I think I agree with some of the comments I think I've been hearing, that the numbers aren't adding up in terms of the special project consideration. And that is something that probably needs refinement from my perspective and that of First Street Lofts. I will correct a comment that was made earlier. First Street Lofts dimensioned the First and Walnut intersection. It wasn't just fixing the pavement. It was a substantial build and realignment of the intersection, along with the creation and paving of those 9 parking spaces, as well as the plaza area. And those numbers are documentable at $500,000. And no, that number was not in the motion, but that's what another special project delivered in verifiable funds. So with that, I think, there's more detail in the letter that was submitted, but I know there's a lot of other people who'd like to speak tonight, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see we have William Martinez.
Hi, Mayor. William Martinez, 438 South Main Street. I happen to be a tenant in Mr. John Chrisman's building. Looking to do a lot of different things in the city of Rochester, including acquiring or building a commercial building and opening up a restaurant or two. I think that when I listen to these meetings, and by the way, I think the city council and the planning commission has done an awesome job. I think that what's overlooked is the fact that the planning commission and city council here has actually developed a great relationship with this development team. They've worked well together over the last 4 years. The developer has been cooperative and following your guidance and direction. You've given them clear guidance and direction. I don't see why there would be any issues going forward over the next 4 years. I think phasing of the project is risk mitigation. To build a project that is allowable per zoning, even if the developer were to make further refinements, presents a risk to the city in terms of having a vacancy if the building didn't lease up as anticipated. I'm personally concerned about seeing Mr. Chrisman's building on the first floor. We all know the bank moved out. I'm up and down the street constantly, and I hear people, the merchants complaining about lack of foot traffic. Yes, they've all been impacted by COVID. I just happened to be at Chomp tonight, talking to the lovely people there. I think that, by the way, when we make comments about Royal Oak and Birmingham, I think the city of Rochester is in the catbird seat that you can learn from both of them. I think both of them have had challenges coming from where they were at to where they are today. And I think the city of Rochester is perfectly poised to find something as a happy medium that provides growth, that increases property taxes. I looked at buying a home on First Street. It sat vacant there for a while. As you're going west, it's on the left. And I found out that it was a connector road. So I do feel for those residents, but I did my due diligence prior to, I elected not to purchase that home, by the way. And because I found out it was a connector road. So I think that this development is in compliance. Yes, it's asking for a variance in height and a setback. But for the most part, I think that the negative comments overlook what Mr. Grammatico articulated and Mr. Bashar articulated, that it's a contaminated site, it's unsightly, The developer has displayed cooperation. I think the city council has done an unbelievable job at identifying the pitfalls of this project to bring it to a spot where I think it can be successful. And having been a developer myself in a previous life and career, I think that relationship between developer and city council is key to a long-term success of a project. And I think that more than anything else has been demonstrated on behalf of both the public officials in the city of Rochester, the Planning Commission, and the developer. So I would hope that we don't have more vacancies. I talked to Mr. Chrisman last week. He's very concerned about the viability of leasing that space because of lack of foot traffic. He's talked to credit unions. He's talked to other banks. I know above Lytle Pharmacy, there's vacancy. Just look up and down the street at all the different vacancies. And so it's concerning. I think that we need foot traffic. I'm a big fan of the Rochester Brunch House, and I know the risk that she's taking renovating a building across the street. So my hat's off to the developers, including the guy at First Street Lofts. He too took a risk. So I think that there's a happy medium in being a pro-growth city, but a moderate growth city. And I think that, again, I'm repeating myself, I think that the relationship here between the developer and city council and planning commission has been incredible. And I hope that this project is voted unanimously to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the number with 256 at the end, the phone. Need to unmute. I think it's *6.
*6.
326 or 256. Can you unmute? Okay, we'll get back to you. Next, Marilyn Trent. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Milia. I'm Marilyn Trent. I live on 624 West University. I've been in the city for over 30 years now. A resident, a business owner, a board member, just all around hanging out in Rochester. So I do agree with Mr. Cuthbertson. It's a new year on about everything that he said. I think that everything has been brought up. I agree that 8 years is a long time. I agree there's traffic and construction management that could be looked at. I don't want to cause the developer fatigue, but I think that this project has come a long way. I was at the August 2019 meeting, and I have seen it change a lot. And what I do like seeing is what they have done with the Clinton River Trail, and they have abided by creating that green space and having, which is really nice. And it's also good for the Clinton River watershed as well. But what I'd like to say, and I'm sure this isn't a surprise, is when the landscapeists are looking at their new trees and replacing trees, and maybe they're replacing invasive species, I don't know, but I would like them to take a look at replacing them with the Michigan native trees, shrubs, and plants that will enhance the area. It will show that they are caring about the sustainability of these, just the few trees and plants that they are considering, and that they don't only have to be decorative, but they actually feed our birds and our pollinators, our butterflies, our squirrels. The reason, and our little chipmunks, the reason that you bought this beautiful place and the reason that people will live there is to enjoy the bird singing and the natural, the small animals maybe that will be inhabiting that space, and that that live there as well. So there are many ways to accomplish this. Oakland County has a list of trees and shrubs that are native to this area, And I wish that for that one thing that you could take a look at and maybe be more of a trendsetter for developers. And you can, if you're attracting young people, if you're attracting these driving singles, I think you called them, or young couples, this is a good promotional, this is good for promotions that you believe in the sustainability of the land that you're developing. Thank you very much.
And also it's good for butterflies and stuff too, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we need to save our pollinators and our local.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Local butterflies.
Mr. Rassam, is that?
Hello, how are you?
Welcome.
111 South Street, Rochester. Calling on behalf of Mr. Randazzo. I have done work with him at our shops for the past 15 years. Personally know him as a good man, as someone that is always willing to work with us and always make sure that his cars are always done, of course. But number one thing, as far as like taking 8 years to do, I don't foresee an issue with Mr. Randazzo getting that done a lot quicker than 8 years, to be frankly honest with you. As any developer would be, I can't imagine anyone wanting to take 8 years to do that. So everyone that's on the notion of that's taking longer or 8 years or him bailing out on the project or anything, I cannot see that happening as me knowing this gentleman for the past 15 years, like I said. Great doing business with him every single time. And honest to God, we really love the foot traffic that would come out from that area. I think it'd be a really good thing for the city of Rochester to have a lot more foot traffic, to have a lot more people coming into our city and living in our city. Younger people in general too, as well. We'd love to see a lot more, again, foot traffic, people wanting to come into the city. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anything further, Siona? I don't see any.
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay.
There's one more, sorry.
Okay, the number 256, is that the one?
Yep.
Hello, this is Amy Humphreys. I'm at 609 First Street, and I've spoken before at the planning meeting. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm against this project. I live on First Street, and our traffic conditions are already untenable. I understand that this is a feeder street or a collector street. We weren't aware of that until recently, but even so, putting another 400 people on our street, at some point, it's just too many people on the same street. And respectfully, one stop sign and demarcating the parking spots, it isn't enough to alleviate the situation. I would also point out, and this has been pointed out in a group letter that we sent the council, there was a traffic study, I believe last year, and that traffic study concluded that the westbound First Street traffic would not be significantly influenced by this development. But in fact, in December of 2017, Mr. Randazzo, the developer of this project, acknowledged to the planning council or the planning committee that most of the traffic would go west down First Street. At a time, people were asking him about the effect on traffic going east or going onto Diversion Street. So I don't believe that we can have it both ways. Okay, either these people are going to leave this development and they're either going to go west or they're going to go east, but at least 50% of them are going to go right down First Street. I'd like to point out also, there have been a couple of business people that have commented, and our quadrant of Rochester, our southwest quadrant, is not against business development. We have aggressively supported our local businesses during this time, but we would ask that the entire burden in developing Rochester is not placed on our neighborhood. Okay, that's all. And I believe that this project is just too big for our neighborhood to sustain it. This is one final thing. In the case that this is approved, and I would hope that it would not be approved, but in the case that it is approved by City Council, I would ask that people in our neighborhood be able to have some input in ways to alleviate our traffic situation, such as doing a no entrance or a one way or something just besides putting up one stop street. I would be happy to give input, and I know almost all of my neighbors would as well. That's all I've got to say, and thank you so much for listening to me. Again, I am against this project in its current form. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. Siona?
Good night.
Mr. Martinez has his hand raised.
So, Mayor, sorry to come back on again, but I'm happen to be looking at a map of First Street, and I'm very empathetic to the residents that live on First Street, especially those with children. I happen to have a 7-year-old. Maybe the Planning Commission, City Council, or whomever, engineering, can come up with a solution to slow down traffic, or I don't know, maybe there's a solution as opposed to,
or something just besides.
Maybe there's a solution besides project, no project, and maybe there's something in the middle that can bring some comfort to the residents on First Street. I just feel like there should be a happy medium as opposed to project, no project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any last comments?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, so at 9:31, we are closing the public hearing. So, and Attorney Kroc, you can help me. So before we get to City Council deliberation, we have, I think, 3 options here. We can approve the special project application, which is approve the special project. It can address standards, identify any conditions, approve the development agreement with any changes, and direct administration to put approval conditions, whatever we decide. So that's one thing. We can deny the special project, and addressing things, or if there's additional action or changes that the council needs, we could table it to another meeting, if we choose. So, Mr. Attorney, is that kind of our options right now?
Yes, that is your options. You can approve it with whatever conditions you feel are appropriate. If there's any additional to what's been in the planner's report and what Planning Commission did, if City Council wishes to deny the project outright, it can do that. If City Council is looking for additional information or needs to see something additional or wants to see a change to the development agreement of some sort, then if it's a substantial change, then I would suggest that it probably come back at the next meeting so you have it in front of you. If it's a minor change, then I would suggest that you could approve it with directing administration and your city attorney to make that change if it's minor and there's no need to come back to see it again. So you're accurate. Those are the options that I see before you.
Okay. So now we are in City Council discussion. And there's no more comments. The planning, the public hearing is closed, and now it's City Council deliberation. So, Councilmember Bavacqua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to thank all the interested parties in showing up for this meeting, including the residents, the business owners, and the developer. As a member of the Planning Commission for the last 3 years, I've watched this project work its way to us on council since it was first presented in 2017. I consider this one of the most publicly impactful and politically charged votes that we've made at this point in the last 3 years. Today at Planning Commission meetings, I've heard from many different stakeholders. In my role on City Council, I try to consider the different viewpoints and agendas of the stakeholders when coming to a vote. I also try to remember who I'm here to represent. I heard from a developer who has spent a great deal of money on property that he would like to develop and to maximize profits wants this project to be larger than zoning will allow. So he's asked for a special project designation. Heard from business owners in the area who are excited by the prospect of increasing their customer base, and who can blame them? But I keep in mind that most of them do not live here. Due to the DDA TIF, almost none of the downtown tax dollars go towards the funding of our police and fire departments, which will be stressed by adding a development of this size. So I take these things into consideration. I've heard from city administration and department heads about their concern that we generate more revenue through development so that the needs we've had, like a full-time fire department, can be met without deficit, and so that the rising costs for services such as trash and aging infrastructure needs could also be met. I've heard from residents, especially those in the area surrounding the development, about traffic, construction time, and environmental concerns, as well as the overall impact to the quality of their life. The residents do need to understand that if this project does not move forward, the city will not gain approximately $150,000 in revenue per year, and that would equate to approximately $30 per year more needed from each taxpayer. If this project were to be downsized and built to its district zoning regulation, it would mean $45,000 less in revenue estimated, which would cost each taxpayer approximately $9 more per year. I would really be interested in hearing from them as to whether they would be okay with those tax increases. I imagine most would. In closing, this vote boils down to a simple question. Does this project warrant a special project designation? Prime consideration as written into the ordinance are the opinions of local residents and the extra benefit this project provides to the adjacent community. I'm extremely hard pressed to say that this project has met these criteria. Clearly, the residents surrounding this site are not pleased, and I suggest that the applicant plan a development that works within the zoning regulations without special project designation. And finally, to the residents, this is a bellwether vote which will inform you as to who your council members are actually here to represent. Pay close attention and remember it come November. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Harrison.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a couple of clarifying questions, maybe our city manager would be able to answer this. If we were not to approve the special project designation, I want to make sure that I understand it fully. We're approving a 5-story building with no setbacks. If we were to not approve this special project designation, would they be able to build to 8 stories if they fall in line with the setback requirements? Or what would the story be that they would be able to build to without this?
Yeah, Vidya, would you be able to, I mean, so she's going to know our zoning a little bit better. So Vidya, if I can rely on you and then I can chime in.
Yes, thank you. With regards to if this project wasn't approved as proposed, the applicant would be able to build whatever is permitted under the RM2. And I am pulling up the zoning district as I see with regard to building height. And in the way the ordinance works is in the RM2, maximum height. Okay, it can go RM2, you can go 25 feet or 2 stories. You can go more than 2 stories. You can go up to a maximum of 8 feet, 8 stories to a height of 100 feet for the building. However, the minimum required setbacks in the RM1 and RM2 are 40 feet each. So anytime a building greater than 2 stories goes up, the corresponding setbacks have to be increased for every so many feet increase in the height. So the taller your buildings get, the further back you have to pull back from the property. That's the ordinance rule. Ideally, they could build an 8-story building, but the setbacks from First Street and from diversion would be significant because as you go higher, you will go further back.
Thank you for that clarification, Vidya. And maybe Mr. Banda could speak to what is the tax that could be generated from this project in terms of maybe a dollar amount per year?
Yes, I understand. I just want to clarify something Vidya just said. So RM2 is not a sliding scale. It's 50 feet when you get up high. I just looked up the notes. So a lot of communities have. higher you go, the farther you have to sit back, but it's 50 feet if you go up to 100 feet. But again, taxes will be determined by the city assessor. Councilman Bovacqua is probably close to right on. Depending on the low end, you heard the developer say this is tens of millions of dollars. It's a simple formula. Usually they base multiple family products on dollars per square foot to build the building. So the assessor will look at that. Our capture out of the 54 mills total is 13 mills. So it could be anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000, depending on what value when this is all said and done. Those 4-story buildings are pretty heavy down on the river for value. Those are high-end buildings. So again, if it's $200 a square foot, you start doing the math, you get to $250,000 for the tax base. So again, depending on when, what year, climate, what the assessors look at climate, but it's pretty much a formula.
And last question, Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Can you please address what can be done about the traffic issues and concerns? We know that we'll see an increase in traffic if there's 129 or 144 units being built. What can we do to mitigate that?
Vixen, if I may just chime in.
Lydia?
That was a concern that came up since day one of this project, and the Planning Commission, initially the applicant did a cursory traffic study and submitted it, but the Planning Commission was not satisfied with it based upon the feedback that was received during the public hearings. So the Planning Commission asked the applicant to do a complete and detailed traffic survey and study. And that study was performed by their consulting engineers, Fleece and Vanderbrink, who are well-known traffic engineers. They presented a report before the Planning Commission, which basically said that the additional units will not have an impact on the neighborhood. And no improvements, as such, no major improvements are warranted in any of the abutting streets. When the study comes from a professional firm, we cannot question its validity because, as the traffic engineer stated, she is making her recommendation based on facts and data that they have gathered in person on the site. So their traffic study by respected professional traffic firms states that no improvements are required. So it's rather difficult for the Planning Commission to require an improvement when there is no traffic engineer's documentation supporting it. The only way you could do that if the city hires its own traffic engineer to confirm the findings of that study or come up with alternate recommendations. I hope that answers some of it.
Mr. Mayor, if I might help.
Yes.
We went over this with the police chief, and the facts, I'm just going to be straight up. The facts are the data from these signs do not indicate what the folks are saying. The average median speed on that road was 31 miles an hour. Now we are in COVID, so it's a tough way to know volume of traffic, obviously, but the speed, there are people that probably speed down that road like they do 3rd Street by my house, but the data, just like on Ludlow, when collected, did not show how it's being portrayed. That's just a fact. You could put stop signs. We've talked with the chief about stop signs. We've tried that in Elizabeth. You see, anybody that's been up and down there, people speed between those spots. So there's no one way to fix all. Our experience with Ludlow, I think the flashing signs do make people slow down. Certainly we could look into that, but there's not a one fix all, but the data itself, forget the traffic study, the data clearly shows that it's not a speeding problem or a volume problem at this point.
If I can add for that, as a police chief, just to what Nick's saying.
Welcome.
There's no question that there's a volume of traffic there, and whenever we have situations similar to Ludlow, Parkdale, those tend to give us the feeling or impression that speeds are higher. We often get complaints, high volume correlate to high speed. However, when we've gone out to test that, we've put a radar counter that's out there that no one really sees and gives us similar data than what we're getting on Ludlow, where we're getting traffic is traveling at reasonable speeds given the area. As Mr. Band-Aid indicated, we checked that in September of last year. We had an average speed of 25 and a 85th percentile, means that most vehicles, 85% of them, are traveling under 30 miles an hour at First and Hacker. In March of last year, we checked at First and Campbell. 27 was the average speed and 31 was the 85th percentile speed. There's no question that people feel that the vehicles are speeding. I'm not certainly questioning that. I'm just saying that traffic is very much at times the science and the emotion of traffic work in two different hands, and so sometimes it's very difficult to get those two together. And I think you saw that when we went through the situation on Ludlow as a great example. We've measured Ludlow traffic even before the signs, and the speeds that we're showing on Ludlow are the same as we had when we had no signs. They're the same as they are when we've added the signs, and they continue to be the same month after month after month. But I'm sure that you will find people that live on the street, and I know this because they've talked to me, that feel that cars are speeding when the numbers, and we count every car that goes down the street now, and we know that the numbers don't bear that out. Are there speeding cars? No question. But the numbers of those, as you, council, have seen those numbers, are very, very small compared to the volume of traffic. So, will we continue to enforce the area? Yes. Will we continue to put the signs out there? Yes. Will we, council, consider to put out the flashing lights as we have in other locations at Parkdale and Ludlow? That's certainly a consideration. But I'm just telling you that based on the studies that we have done, not talking about other independent studies, but the studies that the police department have done with the radar sign, show us that the speeds are very good, particularly for that type of road.
Thank you. Councilman Harrison, anything else? Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Yes, thank you. So first, I'd like to start off and just really give my opinion. My opinion is this is a beautiful project and would be a great development for Rochester. This brings life and activity to a part of our neighborhoods that could use some life and new development, quite frankly. But that's my opinion. So, but as council, our role here is to evaluate this from a special project standpoint. So this project was approved by Planning Commission 6-1, and then there was one member who was absent. That person supports the project. So really, unofficially, we have 7-1. This was an approved project by the Planning Commission. Our role is to evaluate it based upon the 8 criteria in our ordinance for a special project. So in true automotive fashion, I went through all 8 criteria, and I gave them a red, yellow, green. There's no red, and I have 1 yellow. So, green for, it's designated, it can be a special project. Density, the developer has made modifications and reduced the density. This is an area that is zoned to increase. So that matches. The area that really is yellow on my list is the opinion of local residents and neighbors. And so, I'm happy that we had so many support. I'm happy that we had so many send in letters as well as make comments. But I think several of them have been addressed through the actions that have been taken through the developer agreement, through the traffic calming situations we just discussed. Some of them, are opinions, and we all are entitled to our opinions. So I just put that in a yellow category. And my role is to represent the entire city and look for what would be right for all of the residents of the city. Again, desirability, I think it's desirable. The materials have been improved. This is market price. This is good for residents. They're not asking to use parking within the city. It's going to be a benefit. It's going to be more walkable for our community. And it is a big deal that this is a brownfield. It's an industrial site that is going to get cleaned up. So while I am critical on the timeline, and I would urge the developer to compress the timing if at all possible, I do recognize that you're going underground and it is a brownfield. And those first 2 years, you don't know what you may find when you start digging in the dirt. So I would just really encourage you to do whatever you can. And I'm sure you want to do that as well, to reduce that timeline as much as possible. In terms of height, which is really, we're talking about setbacks and height are the reasons why this is designated as a special project. It passes the line of sight test. So I have no problem with the height here. If this were on Main Street, I would be a no. Because of line of sight, I have no problem with the height. And I think the way the setbacks work, we get a sidewalk, we get sidewalk connectors to the trail. And I also just want to comment that the trail improvements, I think it's going to be fantastic. This is going to be a very desirable place and very wonderful place to be. So overall, I support this project. But again, I just really would hope that we could work on the timing. Thank you.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't prepare comments in advance. I wanted to listen to all the residents and all the people who spoke on behalf of this and against it. I appreciated our city planner Vidya's comments. I thank Andrew Amelia for his presentation. Over the last 2 weeks, I've driven, I've walked that area. I've looked at everything that has been provided to us. And I also understand my role as a city council member is to represent the best interests of the 13,000 plus residents of the city of Rochester. That being said, I'm not in the auto industry, so I didn't do the red, yellow, green like Mayor Pro Tem Salvia, but I do have the section 2011-15 special projects approval standards. And I did highlight them though. So so my 2 yellows were item number 4 and item number 8. Item number 4, Mayor Pro Tem Salvia already talked about the opinions of local residents, area businesses, and property owners presented at or before the public hearing. I received emails as early as last fall, summer. I tried to respond to some of them until they became too overwhelming, but I've read them all. I thank the city clerk for what she sent again today. I took the time to read them before this meeting. And then item number 8, any other factor or factors that may help affect the health, safety, and welfare of the best interests of the city and its residents. So really combine 4 and 8 together. How I do anything in my life, I do the positives and the negatives. And I didn't look at it as Mark Albrecht resident living where I live. I did it as Mark Albrecht city council member representing 13,000 plus residents. When I looked at the positives, I looked at that this has gone through the planning commission 7 times. I respect the planning commission members. I respect the fact that I'm an HR guy, so I love collaboration, communication, and deliberation and debate. And so that after 3 years and 7 meetings, we had a 6-1 vote in favor of this meant something to me. Second thing, I looked at what Mr. Randazzo has done, his projects, and I see quality projects in communities that we'd like to emulate. Troy, Royal Oak, and Birmingham. Again, Rochester is Rochester. I'm not comparing us to them, but saying these are all communities where they are looking at this the same way we are looking at this, with a eye towards quality, eye towards how it's going to help our residents and community. I looked at the next positive, which was lower cost housing. Again, while Mr. Milia wasn't able to, and I didn't expect him to be able to quote what the rent would be. This will allow, just like First Street Lofts, ability of people to, move into the city and either beginning their career or as they become empty nesters. I like the concept of live, work, play. Having two daughters who are millennials, I know that they like to be in areas and communities that where they can walk about, partake the local areas, and profit from that. Not profit from that. Enjoy that. Excuse me. Lastly, in my positive column was that this is going to up the game of other rental properties, much like First Street Lofts, which is a great development, nicely done. I think in the presentation and the readings, most of our rental properties have been built, back in the 70s. They're going to go back and have to sharpen their pencil and clean up and do some other things to make sure that they are as attractive to the community and potential renters as First Street Lofts and Riverfront Place would be and will be. And we are truly upping our game. So then I go, what were my concerns? And I think I articulated my concerns, to Mr. Milia during the feedback then. And the first one was the First Street traffic. I do use that cut through coming off Livernois and coming home pre-COVID. So I'm familiar with that. I saw the hundreds of signs that were on the streets, against this. Secondly, which I talked about, and Mayor Pro Tem Salvi also said, the time to complete the development scares me. 8 years, and I think Mr. Cuthbertson, said it very well. This might be a capital play or however it is, but 8 years of construction is concerning to me, and squishing that timeline, I think would be in the best interest of Mr. Randazzo, because I think this is going to be a home run. And I think you will be able to lease out phase one very quickly and then move into phase two. And then thirdly, and again, I mentioned this before, the special project contribution to the city. Now, we have a debate how much First Street Lofts did with their, I have my notes here, with their intersection of Walnut and First Street, the 9 additional parking spaces, and a pocket park of $500,000. Mr. Milia also responded that there are other things that Mr. Randazzo, the developer, is doing with, again, there's a park on the corner, what they're doing with the trail and everything else like that. So again, in my mind, we have a city that's growing. We have a budget that is going to be a challenge. And if we're talking about raising taxes or thoughtful and planful development, I'm more of a supporter of thoughtful development than raising taxes. I'm in support of this project under the conditions that, not conditions, excuse me, that's the wrong term, with more consideration of how we can mitigate the First Street traffic. I watched as Ludlow. Ludlow is also a cut through when I used to go to work and come home from work pre-COVID. And I saw what we did. I saw what Chief Schettenhelm has done. And narrowing the street and the parking on the side does slow you down. It does work. I'm sure there are other things smarter people than me are going to figure out, but mitigating the traffic on First Street is critical to the success of this project, because I respect the residents there who have children, and it can't be a racetrack. The other two, again, shortening that 8 years, and then whatever we can say to our constituents to say, Riverfront Place came in, and here's what they delivered to the city. They put in this park by this, the Clinton River Park. It looks wonderful. Those are my thoughts. So again, I hope that provides some a recap of the thought I put into this over the last 2 to 3 months and up to today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this council has a unique opportunity that other councils have not faced. We have a very finite amount of development of which we will oversee approval for. And that determines then the future of our tax base going forward. Once we're built out, we're done, right? So I have taken into consideration, I use more of the sustainability Rochester metrics when considering the approval of this special project. And the amount of time that it took, the 3 years that it took this developer to come to the city so that their vision and our vision became closer together. I share the same concerns as my colleagues about the timing of the development in terms of completion. I would think it's only in the best interest of both the developer and the city for that to be expedited, as well as the benefit then to all of the business community within our town. I am concerned about the traffic issue, and I would like the city to address this to where maybe I have a more concrete picture of what we can do to mitigate traffic, to make an informed decision on the approval of this. So I see in generalities on paper, it involves some striping, it involves putting up some stop signs. But are these commitments, or is this just kind of, hey, it'd be nice if we did this? Maybe I'm looking for clarification on that.
Yep. So in the actual development agreement, the striping and the stop sign is actually in the agreement that it will be done and that the developer will pay for it.
Okay, so the stop signs at, I mean, there already exists some stop signs, right? Diversion and Walnut, right? Now we're looking for some at Wilcox, is that correct?
Jeff, can you maybe read that
If I may?
sentence? Yeah.
Sure. On page 4, E6, it talks about those, and it says that the developer will pay for offsite traffic calming measures, including a stop sign and markings mid-block between Castell and Wilcox, and solid striping along First Street, establishing a defined parking lane. So it's mid-block First Street between Castell and Wilcox is where that stop sign would be.
So then between Wilcox and Walnut, would there be room to add the radar like we do on Ludlow?
Yeah, well, that's a city decision, a city council decision. Really.
We could definitely study that and bring that back to council. If I remember correctly, those units are about $6,500 to $7,500 each.
Okay. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Okay, further comments from council?
Mayor, Ann?
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you. First, thank you to all my council member colleagues who have stated their thoughts, concerns, etc., and approval of what they thought of their. I'll take the comment of Mayor Pro Tem Salvia of her personal opinion, because we all have one, and I think that's important that we also have the opportunity to let the public know what we feel about something, even though it's just our opinion, and let everyone know that we are representing all the people in the community when we make our decisions, because I think it's very important. I've lived here for a long time. What you might not know is I lived on First Street for quite some time. Actually enjoyed living there, so my daughter could we could walk the daughter to kindergarten up First Street and home and be close to a school, etc. I know times haven't changed that much since I've been here. As far as traffic, the bigger concerns I feel that are on First Street have always been those that park in the very area where you're wanting to put stop signs, which is very dangerous to begin with. There is always a slowdown right there, and you can't, you just slow down because you have to. There's cars parked on the street. Further down, going down the hill, that was where I lived, heading towards Walnut. So overall, I think that's something that we need to talk about before we make a decision, because I think it would be the wrong decision to put stop signs there. Plus, that's also that's the bus route for the school for when that comes back in. And to me, that's the biggest hazard has been the parking of vehicles right there on the street. But, you know, there it is allowed. So that's one thing. Two, I think that overall, I stated earlier, I honestly, I think the building is beautiful. It is in keeping with the historic nature of our community. The brick matches almost like the Western Knitting Mills historic accents, and the Royal Park, everything that brings that added character and keeps us all in fitting with our community. The sight line off the bridge has always been, that was my first, you know, thing that really bothered me, because we're used to seeing the horizon and you feel like you can't. It was brought up earlier as well that what you see on paper isn't what you get. I've actually lived with not in my backyard and fighting things like this here, because I do truly understand what the effects of this building would do, possibly because when you put tall buildings like this and you surround an area, especially in a valley like this, you have shadowing is huge. It's not been brought up at all in any discussion from the Planning Commission documents or anything that I've read regarding this project, but from having a, you know, proposed 6-story parking structure in the backyard of the homes over on Alice, was able to get that dropped down because of the shadowing effects that it would have on our properties and how it would change the dynamics of how we live, okay? And that has proven to be true. You don't have sunlight in your backyard anymore when you have a big building there. My concern is how much of the shadowing is going to affect the dynamics of the street right there with everything on a 0 lot line, and how much extra maintenance will it take to, like in the middle of winter, have to worry about, you know, icing or anything like that. You don't know what you can't see in real life. Tide cleaner, same thing. That one is a 0 lot line property, and it's, in my opinion, as I'll state my opinion, that's a disaster. First Street Lofts was also a great idea. Never liked the, you know, the 0 lot lines there either. I think that the discussion back then is that was going to be so dangerous at that intersection. All these things were going to happen, but we have never heard of any issues taking place with that. And that brought a lot of traffic as well. That was also discussed many years ago with that project. When you go through our sustainability maps and you go through our master plan, everything else, we have set our community up to allow these types of projects to come into these areas when we renamed them and broke down our districts and renamed everything in our zoning to allow for certain things to come in so other certain things could not. So if you can meet all the check marks of a project, like it has been stated, I truly understand. I'll stop for a second and just say I truly understand how people feel about not in my backyard, because it happens, and you cannot change things from progressing unless the city as a whole does what the County of Boulder did, and they went out and bought up the land to preserve the land to do what they wanted to with it. If we truly want to preserve what everyone says we need to preserve, the cities have to start stepping up and purchasing that land that other people have. You cannot control what other people can afford to purchase, buy, and bring to our community. I actually think it's awesome that somebody chose, all these developers keep choosing our community to come and bring new life to it. We have to, over time, things will end up getting bulldozed down and rebuilt again. Right now, I think this is an incredibly beautiful building. My concerns are how it's going to shadow that whole area on the street side, if that's going to be a problem. But I have to say I would be in favor of this project for what it will do to the community and how it will enhance it for the future generations. It's a very quality built property is going to do more than that. And I think it will actually invite others to be able to see what could actually be done and complete some of these other projects that have been sitting there vacant as well. And I also thank the developer very much for coming in and taking on that responsibility of cleaning up an area that was bad. We've seen what that can do to our community, and it has actually been incredibly awesome to see those projects and the people take that kind of care into a community that they love so much and want to share that with other people. So my biggest concerns right now that I think we do need to find some solutions for, if we're all going to go down the same line of making sure about this traffic issue, I don't see how we can do a lot to change that on First Street with the dynamics that take place there right now. I do think the stop signs would be a total hazard, and I feel that moving forward with a project like this, I don't believe it's going to take 8 years either, but everything does happen. We saw it with our own DPW building. You don't know what's going to happen, okay? You don't know what's going to happen with what happened with the Suave property just across the way. But we've had to live through all of these here, and we keep wanting answers, but we're not the ones holding the key to that. I'm not sure what to do yet, except I think I should just make a motion that we get clarification from the developer and city administration and the city attorney as to how we would be able to alleviate those concerns of the traffic, if that is to be that, and whatever other stipulations anyone else on council would want to add to it, and have it come back for final approval. So that would be my motion.
So there's a motion, and tell me if I'm correct. There's a motion to approve the special project, but with administration still continuing to look at the traffic on First Street and come back with a proposal. Is that what I'm paraphrasing? So tell me if I'm.
Mayor, I think that because we've had mixed reviews on the traffic, and I want to be mindful of what the residents, feel and are concerned about. I don't think that this, what has been proposed is a good idea at all, especially for knowing exactly what, like I stated, how that area is. So I'd like to make a motion to move this project forward with whatever we can do within our means to do that. And I'm not the one to make that decision, because the police chief, and I think, has more authority for that suggestion there. Or do we just approve the project and move forward?
Well, I mean,
I'll make the motion then, Mayor, that
okay,
we move forward with the special project with city administration working with the developer to make sure that First Street is safe and traffic is controlled in a safe manner.
or how a suggestion is that there's a motion to approve the special project, and then a corollary to that is have administration working with developer and with residents maybe to come back with a traffic plan for First Street. That I'm just trying to.
I know it's a difficult one. I'm not sure.
Or there could be separate. You could make a motion to pass this project, and then afterwards we can talk about the traffic situation.
I
So,
think we also have to speak to the developer agreement as well.
Mayor, I think Andy might have a suggestion, the developer's right hand here.
Mr. Milia?
Thank you. May I summarize a couple points as well, in addition to answering some specific questions that were just raised?
I thought you were going to have a solution here for us.
Well, I do have a solution. I caution any vague language. So I think it's concerning to make it safe, or to say with
Right, I
residents.
agree. Absolutely.
What I would offer is to have our traffic consultant work in conjunction with city administration, including police and fire, to talk about appropriate traffic calming and other safety measures. That would be acceptable and agreeable. And I would defer to your city attorney to kind of, mold that language, but to use vague adjectives, I think would be more concerning.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Milia. So
I agree.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bavacqua?
Yeah, I guess my concern is that this may end up being a situation where it's decided that some of those speed meters are required, and then there's another $15,000 that's going to be on the taxpayers' backs to, try to ensure that this is safe due to this new project coming in, and then we'll be stuck voting on that. So, thanks.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share Mayor Pro Tem Salvia's concern. What does this mean for the existing development agreement in front of us and the approval of the special project? So I don't think you can separate that. That comes with this.
So,
form.
So the motion would be to approve the special project and to approve the agreement with the addition of that the developer will work with has volunteered your traffic person to, I don't know if that's, I'm putting your words in your mouth again there. So, Councilmember Albrecht, you had a comment?
Well, I'll defer to City Manager Wing. He might have something, then I'd like to go after that.
Yeah, so Attorney Crott, I believe in the development agreement, there's that language. I don't know if that's what you were going to say.
Right. What I was going to suggest is if the idea is for the city and the developer to continue to work on that particular element of the development agreement, is to move to approve both items, the special project and the development agreement. So, but just call out paragraph, that E6, to approve that I guess it would be contingent. The approval is contingent on administration and the developer working out suitable traffic calming measures for First Street.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yeah, that was where I was going, because City Attorney Crack said before we began deliberation that we could approve with minor changes. So I think that was the intent of Councilperson Peterson. I also would, I support that. I'm not supporting the motion. I'm just supporting the concept that we look at not only E6, but E4, which is clarifying the language on the special project, so that as Councilmember Sage, I think several other of us, Mayor Pro Tem Salvia, myself, said, I'd like to be able to tell the residents, here's what got done. I'm not hung up on the number, the $75,000. I heard what Vidya had to say. I'd like to say something gets done. And it's a little fuzzy math right now because, I'm looking at the picture of the Clinton River thing and Nick's saying, oh, all we have to do is this and this, but I see other things in there. So I'd like to just clarify that. So I would support a motion that approves this with city administration working with the developer to clarify section E4 and E6. This would address the residents' concern with the traffic on First Street, and then it would address basically, I think all of us as council members to be able to tell our constituents, here, we've negotiated to get something done so you can look at something tangible. I'm not concerned about the number of the check. I want to see something tangible that residents can say, oh, and Mr. Randazzo would probably feel good to say, hey, I came in there. Here's what I got done. It's beautiful. It's not only going to benefit the residents of the community I'm building, but all the residents of Rochester. So I don't know if Councilmember Peterson wants to amend her motion, but I would support it with the caveat of adding E4 into the motion.
So Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, Mayor, I would be happy to have that happy amendment to that. As I had asked, I had wanted help with that because I knew there were some things we really can't say to make that happen. So I appreciate the attorney, moving this forward this way.
So Mr. City Manager, so then can you sum up for the group what exactly Councilmember Peterson's motion is?
Yeah, I'm actually going to ask the attorney so I don't say something. So Attorney Crott.
You're on mute.
Nice pun, City Manager.
Yep. Hey, that's what you paid the big bucks for as the attorney. Come on.
Big bucks, man.
That's right. So I think the appropriate motion would be a motion to approve the special project request by the developer under the terms and conditions put forth from Planning Commission, subject to the city planners review and approval comments, as well as the development agreement subject to city administration and the developer working out clarifying language and putting more definite language for paragraphs E4 and E6. And for the reasons that the city council members proffered at the meeting that on the special project approval criteria.
Okay, so Councilmember Peterson, are you good with that?
100%.
Okay, so there's a motion by Councilmember Peterson, support by Councilmember Albrecht. Further discussion. Councilmember Bavacqua.
Just some context for my coming no vote. 3 years on Planning Commission and anything that's come through council, this will be the first development that I'm voting no on. Thanks.
Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciated our resident comments tonight. This is something that's weighed very heavily on me. The emails were appreciated. People reaching out. That's really important because I think that as a council member, it is our job to reflect the will of our residents. I also feel that it is our job to take more of a bird's eye view of the city, to think long term, to think beyond the hopefully not 8 years it's going to take to develop this property, but to look at the overall picture of who we are and what we want to be moving forward. And I know that traffic has been a major issue with our residents. I think it's a major issue everywhere. It's something that I heard door knocking when I was campaigning for this seat. And it was something that was really important to me. So one thing that I've looked and sought out through the Michigan Municipal League, the other trainings that I've done, is what is the solution to traffic? Because no matter what, we're going to see traffic increases in our communities. I think it's a trend around the state, if not the country. And what is the solution to that? One of the things that I've read, it's been suggested from MLML, is walkability of communities. The more we can live and work in the same place, the less traffic there is, the less demand there is for commuting. And that's something that as a millennial, myself and my friends all seek out in our lives and in what we want and what's important to myself. And I know that I live in Rochester. I work from home. That's not going to change for me. Sometimes I never leave this town, which COVID times, but even beyond that, because everything I have is here. Why do I ever need to leave Rochester? I live here, I work here, I play here. And I'm happy to walk downtown. Downtown is my running route. The trail is my running route. I've run by this site almost every day that's going to be developed. And walkability is important to me. And I think that offering workforce housing is going to drive a more diverse population. I feel like we meet the needs for our seniors, we meet the needs for our families, and I think that this project is going to help drive like a younger audience to our community. And it's important in a city to have a balance of age and thought and diversity. So I'd like to see more of that, and I think that this project can meet that goal. I also consider we're running into a budget deficit in our city, and that's going to be more conversations coming up. But investing in smart development is one way that we can be fiscally responsible as a city to make sure that the needs of our residents are met. And that's not the most, that's not why we place our vote. But it is something that I consider when deciding on a project. I don't want to raise taxes. I want to find creative solutions that meet the demands of our residents and of our budget. I serve on the budget committee. It's something I think about all the time. This is not going to make up for any budget shortfall. And it's not a reason to necessarily vote yes, but I think that the contribution to the city, the increase in taxable value is important and is something to consider, because we're all thinking about our property values as well. And one thing that I think you consider in urban planning is an investment in a vacant lot in a property that has, it looks decrepit to me, a building on it right now. I'm not sure what that is. This is going to transform the space, and an investment, an injection of cash in this area is going to raise home values nearby. So First Street residents, I feel for you. This is going to be frustrating. And I understand that. And I want to work on these traffic issues and make sure that we don't have minimal street closures, lane closures. But in the end, the research supports that your home values are going to increase because of investments like this in the city. So I'm really thinking about you when I make this decision, because I want my home value to increase, and I know you want yours to as well. And I believe that this smart investment in our city is going to help do that and make it a more, Rochester is such a desirable place to live. Our main street's nationally recognized. We're one of the safest communities in our state, and I'm so proud to live here. And I feel like smart development like this is only going to drive more people to want to live here too. So I am in support of this project and feel for and appreciate all the resident comments. Thank you.
Very good. Any further comments? Well, I will make a final comment. I'm not a millennial, I guess. I've lived in Rochester a long time. That site down there has been really, a mess, or however you want to say it. It has not been an attractive site. First Street Loss was really the first kind of redoing of that area. So, I think something new, something good going in there, whatever that is a positive for that area going in there. I get it on First Street. That parking study says it's not going to affect traffic. All the numbers in the world. I think it probably will affect it. It's going to increase traffic. I mean, it just is. Traffic's a problem everywhere in the city. I do feel for the people on First Street, and the woman who says, her daughter can't play outside in the front yard. I mean, I believe that. And so we need to do something to try to help those people the best we can. And I know there's not quick fixes to every problem, but we need to do that. A big thing to me, and we talk about tax dollars, is we are getting this contaminated site fixed for free. The developers picking it up. A brownfield site would cost us, tax dollars in the long run. So, I mean, that's a big benefit. The target demographics to me are what we're looking for in Rochester. You know, this is a younger demographic, but also kind of fits into what I think is what Rochester's looking for. And to me, ultimately, this is private property that is going to be developed somehow. You know, is this the perfect project? You know, there's no such thing as a perfect project. I have been on the planning commission now for, you know, a year and a half, getting, you know, a year and a half or so. So I wasn't on all of them, but I was on the first, a couple of the iterations. You know, I think we tried to make it better. We tried to make it smaller. But ultimately, I think it got to a point where it's not perfect, but it's something that I think I can live with. So I will support this project. Councilmember Bavacqua.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of take you guys through a little bit of a thought process here on, you know, it's great that some of these things are being being fixed if the project goes through. You know, there's some contamination there. There's a cost associated with that. But if you go back to when this project was first being presented, we were told that it needed to be the size that it was because they paid a lot of money for the land, and there was mitigation to be done, and in order for them to for it to make good business sense, it just needed to have this massing. And over the years, we got it to a more palatable size, and then in the last year or so, or 2 years, we know that cost of construction has gone through the roof. Yet we still find out that, well, there was a lot of meat on that bone. You know, that they can still do it even though the costs have gone way up. So, you know, I just think that when we're considering these things, we need to really take all this into consideration. And maybe in the future, when a developer comes in and says, we really have to have this thing be super large because, you know, it just doesn't work for us otherwise. When it's all said and done, obviously there was a lot of room to move there. So I just thought I'd put that on the record.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon.
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Bavacqua.
No.
Harrison.
Yes.
Peterson. Ann.
She's back on mute.
No, I'm back. I made it back. Sorry.
Okay, your vote on the motion?
No.
To approve the contract, you made the motion? Your vote's no?
Yes.
Her vote's no.
Okay, and Sage?
Yes.
Very good. So the motion passes 5-2.
Correct, Your Honor.
Thank you to Vidya and to all the people who participated in this. And good luck to all of us, right? So thank you, everybody, for participating. I know it was a long session, but we'll go from there. And now we have more council business to move on to, so we will move on.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank you and all the members of the council and your staff and consultants for a very collaborative effort. So we appreciate the vote tonight, and we look forward to working with you to finalize this. Thank you.
And thank you for being well prepared to come tonight to answer questions. Thank you. Okay, next we have no legislative deliberation. We have no reports from regular business. Receive a report from various boards and commission. We have a report from the Planning Commission of all things. So, Member Bavacqua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me get myself situated here. We only had a couple items on the agenda. I know one of them was a non-conforming use approval. Let me see where we're at. Yeah, Condominium Management Inc. For a site plan and special exception proposal for general office space at 411 Woodward, and that was approved. The other thing that we did was we had to make we're looking at making an adjustment to sections 404 and 406 of the Rochester zoning code. And it kind of was in line with this non-conforming use. One of the things that we ran into in the past was because of the way that the zoning was written, it could have been argued possibly that if we approved a non-conforming use in a specific situation for or a specific site, that perhaps it would be able to be used throughout that district. So I guess we're fixing that with this possible change, and I think that was going to be written and then represented or presented to us in the coming planning meetings. So that's it.
Very good. Next, new business referral miscellaneous. Siona, any more public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor, we do not have any more comments.
All right, and thank you for staying up with us, Siona. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Next is the receipt of the check register and report and the city manager update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. The two check registers are the January 22nd and the February 1st. And seeing that we're getting a little later in the night, I'm just going to highlight a few things with my manager's report. It starts on page 114 in the back. We have mailed out the 2021 community surveys. We've received more than 300 back, and we appreciate residents entering some in through the online portal, as well as mailing those back or dropping them off at City Hall. Please get those in as we're trying to wrap the data input up by the end of this month, this February. Besides that, I want to highlight that we are continuing with the Welcome Back Wednesdays. So our City Hall is open on Wednesdays from 10 until 3 p.m. Two. I'm sorry. Thank you. From 10 until 2 p.m. And mainly, what we've been seeing is pet licenses, which the clerk just jumped in on there, as well as parking permits and paying various other bills. And we've had some good overall feedback there. Finally, we have the ice pond in the back of the municipal park is frozen enough, more than the 4 inches. So, we've had various ice skaters as well as hockey. And I should have said, finally, our master plan committee, the steering committee did start, and we'll be continuing into the subcommittees, as well as following up with information with those committee members. And then the consultants will be providing monthly updates that I'll be providing to City Council. So we'll keep all of council appraised of the progress as we move forward. And that's all I have for this evening.
Very good. Madam City Clerk.
Petition packets are still in the works. The state revised the forms I had on file, so I had to order some new supplies. So still looking for that. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Very good. City Attorney Crock.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson. Are you with us?
Oh, yes, I am. No, sir. I'm all set. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Salvia.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to ask administration to provide to council via the manager's packet the signed motion and developers agreement when that is finalized from tonight's project. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Sage.
Couple things. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To piggyback on Mayor Pro Tem Salvia's comment there, is it possible that we have communication between the city and the developer so that we might discuss it on the February 22nd meeting? I don't want to wait 2 months to get down to discussing E4 and E6. I would rather do it a bit more expeditiously.
I believe Nick's actually working on, I hear him in the office behind me right now. So he's already talking with Andy.
Very good. And you had put something in the manager's report regarding rescheduling one of the budget meetings from a Saturday to a potential Monday. Has that been finalized or?
Unless there's a problem with council, we're hoping that yes, not to have staff actually be working on the weekends in addition to the through the week. So what has been proposed through the budget committee, which does have 3 council members, is that updated schedule, and we're hoping to basically finalize that overall calendar. Unless there's a problem.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Albrecht,
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Bavacqua,
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councilmember Harrison,
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you.
Nick, you want to say anything?
No, sir, thank you very much. And actually, I'm talking to the chief and we've got some suggestions already.
All right, good. And I'd just like to thank everybody for their hard work. And you know, I know it's a cliche, but I'm proud of the council that even though this was a emotional issue and stuff, everybody here, we all deliberated in very positive fashion. We're all very civil. We can agree to disagree, and you know, all those cliches. And I think we did a pretty good job on it. So thank you, everybody, and everybody have a good evening. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.